Hello, I'm Hal Lublin.
And I'm Mark Gagliardi.
Since the dawn of humanity, one issue has gone unsettled. With the fate of the world in the balance, we're here to settle, once and for all, best stand-up comedian.
That's right. Don't worry, everyone. We got this.
Podcast should have a theme song. Podcast should not have a theme song. Yes, they should. No, they shouldn't. They sound good. Yeah, but people are just going to skip past it. You know what? You're right. We got this.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage a very funny man. Really funny guy. You know him from We Got This with Mark and Hal. Ladies and gentlemen, Hal Lublin.
Hey, everybody, how we doing tonight? Let's get the energy going. I wrote some stuff down. It's not fully formed yet. Let me see here. Something.
You know what? We're kicking you off the stage.
Restaurant. Okay, that's my time. Thank you, everybody.
And now, please welcome to the stage and to the podcast our very fantastic and special and uniquely qualified for this episode, comedy genius, Jordan Black. How are you, sir?
Thank you. I'm great. And let's give it up for Hal again. I mean, it's not easy to get up to this guy, do this, you know. So these new guys, you know, it takes a lot of bravery to get up here. So let's give them a hand. We've got to get there. We've all of us old hats know what that's like. So.
You guys remember. You guys remember.
Yeah, we all remember.
Oh, man. Would you guys rather see a comedian at their peak or at their start? A stand-up.
Peak. I get anxiety going to stand-up shows because I'm rooting for this comedian so bad because I know what it's like to be on stage and bomb. It's terrible. There's nothing worse. There's no worse.
Yeah. Now, you've played with the Groundlings, obviously, and wrote on Saturday Night Live, so you're used to being surrounded by an ensemble of comedy. What's your experience in stand-up?
I did a little stand-up initially early in my career. I didn't stick with it. And I wish I had actually, but I didn't. And part of that was because it was so brutal. Yeah. And with sketch and improv, it's ensemble. So even if you bomb, you're laughing about it together backstage about how terrible it went. Like you're sharing in it with other people. So there's still something to enjoy. But when you walk off stage as a stand-up and it bombed, there's no one going like, hey man, you know what? Next time it's like all the other stand-ups are going like, yeah, that was terrible. Yeah. You're pretty funny.
You're not sharing in the joy, too.
You're not sharing in the like, man, it's all right. You know, you'll get them next time. It's like, it's every man for himself. And
I never, I'm in awe of stand-ups. I love stand-up comedy. I love the history of stand-up comedy. But yeah, it's not I like bouncing things off of other people.
I mean, stand-up to me is the most impressive of all the art forms for me personally. Yeah. Because it's the one thing that you can do as an artist. And if the audience rejects it, they're directly rejecting you. Yeah. They're not rejecting this painting you put up on a canvas and you're going like, well, they don't get what I was going for, you know, or a script you wrote or a movie you were in. Cause you can blame the director, you can blame the studio, you can blame whatever. But when it's you and they go and they're not laughing, it's you they hate. That you suck.
Yep. Yeah,
you can't 100%. Go, this microphone is really terrible.
Yeah. Well, I honestly, though, I don't know if stand-up started that way because it was, there were a lot of the old timers. They had writers. It was all joke. It's, you don't like my jokes. I think, probably not till Carlin and Pryor in the 70s. And it was just like, this is just the brutal, honest version of who I am.
But even before that
raw.
You could have three different comedians tell the exact same written line. And one of them will make it work and two of them won't. Yeah. So there is, even with somebody else's material, you have to make it work and they're going to judge your delivery. Even somebody like Emo Phillips, who's a brilliant comedic mind, such a great joke writer, will not perform in LA because writers have taken his material and used it elsewhere. So he'll only go tour. But at the end of the day, if he doesn't have a good show, it's still him. It's just a heightened version of who he actually is.
Yeah, because even if people are writing your jokes, the audience doesn't know that. And they're saying, you suck.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, let's dive in and start talking about some of these stand-up comedians. I've just tried to compile not even remotely an exhaustive list, but an exhaustive list would take us a week to get through. So I figured it might be fun. Frequently on this show, what we'll do is we'll take our topic, break it into categories, pull one victor from each category, and then pit them against one another. And I think a way to do that for this is to look at decades. starting with the 1960s, because prior to that, stand-up comedy was in like the Copa and in the Vegas shows. There was always another comedian, or there was always another musician or a band or it was just part of a bigger show. Yeah. 1963, first stand-up club opens in New York. Bud Friedman opens the Improv. And that was the first ever. We're doing a lineup. We're doing 2 drink minimum, and it's just a person with a microphone all night.
Wow.
So if I may, and please add people to this list that I forget, and then we can talk about these folks. It's going to sound daunting. The 1960s is the longest list that I have, but that's because a lot of legends came out of the 60s. In no particular order: Dick Gregory, Moms Mabley, Red Fox, Lenny Bruce, Don Rickles, Phyllis Diller, the Smothers Brothers, Mort Saul, Bob Newhart, Joan Rivers, Jonathan Winters, and Woody Allen.
Wow.
Is there anyone else from the 1960s, like legends?
Or did he start in the 70s?
Who's that?
Cosby?
I feel like the 70s were kind of his.
Okay.
That was like his big decade.
I actually have him in the 80s listed here, but I can move.
Well, but for stand-up, that was his sitcom, but he was doing stand-up. He was a huge stand-up before.
Right. When was Himself?
Yeah.
I feel like that was the 70s.
Yeah. I'll put that.
Because Fat Albert and all that stuff was 70s.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Himself came out in 83.
He was a huge stand-up before that, though.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
And I was trying to put these in like, I was trying to.
Their peak.
Peak, yeah.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay. Cool. That's a great list. That's a hard list because
I know.
Like, Smothers Brothers just jumps out at me.
Yeah.
So brilliant. I'm trying to think, who else did you see?
But do you think of them more for their double act or more for their show, which was so kind of subversive and introduced?
Their show for sure.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, they're more of they started, because a lot of these, like, I guess that's a question we can ask now. Are we looking at purely stand up? Like,
right.
You've got Steve Martin and Eddie Murphy have, these giant mega movie careers.
Yeah.
But, they started and were at one point they were primarily stand ups.
Yeah. I would include them. Even though they left stand up to do movies, I would include, when they were stand ups, they were.
Right. But the Smothers Brothers, when you think of the Smothers Brothers, you think of television.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I think we're judging them off. We want to judge them off the basis of their like stand-up acts.
Yes.
So we'll keep it to that, which the Smothers Brothers still are great. I mean, their act on their own was fantastic.
Well, while we are weeding folks out, then I think that might be the easier way than to just go through them one at a time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Would we consider Jonathan Winters a stand-up because so much of it was improvised?
I think, if you're up there and it's just you and a microphone doing jokes, that's stand-up,
Yeah.
He wasn't juggling.
Yeah, that's true.
Off this list, like Red Fox, Don Rickles. These guys are Bob Newhart. Bob's maybe Joan Rivers. They're legends. Woody Allen. I don't know.
I'll say one that pops out to me from this. I think he's got to be on anybody's short list for a comedy Mount Rushmore, just because he's the one that took the bullet for everybody. Mm-hmm. And that's Lenny Bruce.
I was going to say the same thing. He's the most legendary on this list.
Yeah. Because you were talking earlier about like, if they don't like what I'm doing, they don't like me. This is my. Yeah. Like Bob Hope in the 40s had writers.
Yeah.
Lenny Bruce this is who I am. I am unapologetically myself. And he was the first comedian to repeatedly get arrested. Drugs eventually took him, but.
Yeah. You can divide the 60s almost into 2 buckets, right? You have your setup punchline, like one liner over and over. Yeah. Red Fox is brilliant at that. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Joan Rivers was great at that. Phyllis Diller too. Mm-hmm. Then you have people who came more from Second City, like that Bob Newhart. I'm going to give you one half of a phone conversation. Shelley Berman did that as well.
Or Mort Saul doing what John Oliver's doing now, which is just like these essays, really just funny essays.
But I think Lenny Bruce sort of created a path for comedians that would follow him into more, he like made it more abstract and made it even more personal. Phyllis Diller talking about her husband Fang is hilarious, and she's one of the funniest people in history, but it's not like she's telling you the real things that are going on.
I think that's a good point, Hal, because a big thing for me, because Pryor is my favorite comedian, and I think Lenny fits into like my reason for that actually fits with Lenny too, because I feel like with Pryor, there was a paradigm shift.
Mm-hmm.
Lenny, there was a paradigm shift. It went from just, other people writing your jokes or set up and punch to I'm talking about my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And things that are important to me. And I'm finding a funny take on them.
And society.
Yeah.
Not just about his own story, but,
exactly.
Nobody went after religion the way he did. Nobody went after, really hot button topics.
Yeah, but he was the first really to do it.
Yeah.
Or at least to popularize that style.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of maybe importance to comedy, he would be kind of the runaway in this group. But that can't be just that, right? It has to be like what's great about Richard Pryor, who, spoiler alert, if he doesn't win would be really odd and is at least going to be one of the final two people we talk about, is not only was he a trailblazer, but he's hilarious. I almost
everything
cursed on my own podcast
funny.
I've been doing for 5 years. Everything he did was every bit talking about his addiction, talking about drowning, talking about going to the hospital, like everything. He turned everything into humor and did it in a way that was uniquely him.
The conversation between his brain and his rapid heartbeat as he is on fire is one of the, and it's horrifying what he went through.
Yeah. But so
we'll get to Pryor. Don't worry.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're talking funniest, then that's a whole different thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The funniest and greatest to me aren't the same thing.
Right.
Like, greatest is impact. Like your impact in comedy is still felt today. There's a lot of people who had funny jokes and great jokes and funny material, but did they have a huge impact on the comedians who came after them or on the era?
And I think that would put Dick Gregory high up on this list as well, because he was, I mean, aside from being just a groundbreaker, being the first like white club or, integrated club performer, he seemed to me like or early on, one of those guys that was like, I'm going to make you laugh and I'm going to make you think.
Yeah.
That like comedy for social good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I mean, still very funny, but as far as just being hilarious.
Well, Dick was brilliant. I mean, like, because he did stand up, but he talked about issues.
Right.
Dick stopped being funny when he started only talking about issues.
Yeah.
He really kind of went off the rails there at the end.
Yeah.
But, in my opinion, but when he was doing stand up, because he stopped doing stand up at some point, it was just the guy talking about the government is trying to tap your telephone.
That's the thing. He went from comedy to being like the guy with a cigarette talking to another guy with a cigarette.
Yeah. Which he may have been completely right. It just wasn't funny anymore.
Yeah. He's sitting there like, the government is trying to stop us, the deep state. And somebody's like, tell jokes.
Yeah.
Right.
This isn't funny.
Don't tell that, but make me laugh when you say it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing about comedy, right? Is in any satire, whether it's stand up or a sketch, is when you make people laugh, you can also get them to listen in a way that's hard to, everything else we say is in an echo chamber. Yeah. If the three of us agree on something and, we're not going to change minds and hearts going out there just buying an ad or something. But if you can make somebody laugh, that'll catch them off guard and make them think.
Well, I always say, like, when comedians get in trouble for doing this type of joke or saying this type of word, I'm always like, if it were funny, they wouldn't get in trouble. Because people would get it. It's when you're just saying something, dumb or whatever. I don't judge anybody's art. I don't care what you say it. I'm totally anti-censorship. But if you're going to say something controversial and it's not funny, then it's just controversial. So then you're going to get into a lot. But if it's a hilarious joke, people tend to forgive that because they feel like they can get where you're coming from with it.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's way preferable to get a than a huh?
Yeah. Because I can't stand when comedians go like, oh, you guys are so sensitive. Make us laugh. Okay, make sensitive people laugh then. I don't know what the problem is. We're the audience. So we came to laugh, I promise you.
I don't want to give Phyllis Diller too short a shrift in this either, because she was another example of groundbreaking, but also hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, you got to think about it. There weren't any women doing stand-up for so long.
Yeah.
There was Phyllis Diller out there. I think she predated Joan Rivers. You know?
Yeah.
I feel like they were all out there by themselves to a certain degree, but she was out there by herself.
Right.
And was funny and was keeping up. you know, and I'm sure it was not easy. And I'm sure there was a lot of clubs that were like, "Why? We're not going to put on a woman," you know?
Yeah.
So again, she was a trailblazer and she was super funny, super tight. I worked with her once too.
Oh yeah.
Oh, how was she?
She was lovely. She was very old at the time.
Yeah.
But she knew how to turn it on for the camera, which was impressive. And then I got to go to her house, and she had a room that was dedicated to Bob Hope because he discovered her and gave her career, she said. And she had a guest book that everybody has to sign when they come in. And I saw like one of the most recent ones. This was years ago, like maybe 2005 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to sign the guest book, and it like one of the last people to sign was Roseanne. I was like, well, that's cool.
Whoa.
So.
Unbelievable.
So I guess it comes back like, for as groundbreaking as he was, is Lenny Bruce's groundbreakingness, because I do think there are funnier people on this list. I think Red Fox is funnier than Lenny Bruce, to me personally.
Yeah.
And again, comedy is a subjective thing, but I don't know that we can deny Lenny Bruce's contribution.
Me, he's the most influential on this list.
Yeah.
So, because people weren't even cursing in stand-up before him.
Right.
So, and people now.
Some of us still aren't.
Right. Yeah, that's good. but now that stands out more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People were like, oh, he's a clean comic? Oh, okay. Well, that's different.
Yeah. I love me some clean comics, though, man. I respect some clean comics. I'll go see a Brian Regan show. That guy works hard for his laughs.
Well, I mean, come on. Seinfeld is my favorite all-time comedians ever.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, he's, we all know, as people who do comedy, it ain't about the curse words. Because if curse words are all you got, then my mother would be hilarious. He would be a millionaire if that was enough to be a great comic.
Oh my God.
Jordan's mom is touring at the Civic Arena this weekend.
That's right. No one under 18 admitted.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't come in here and watch these goddamn dishes. I don't think we can build a sitcom around that.
Stuff my mom says. It can be a spin-off.
Yeah.
So are we leaving the 60s with Lenny Bruce in our pocket?
I am.
Yeah, I think you have to.
All right, let's move on to the 1970s. Mm-hmm. Big move in the 1970s. So, of course, 1963 was the opening of the very first proper stand-up club. 1972, the big deal was Johnny Carson moved The Tonight Show from New York to Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And when he did that, there was a massive influx of comedians to LA in the 1970s. Bud Friedman opened an improv here. Mitzi opened up the Comedy Store. And later the Belly Room, which was all women comedians when it opened. So yeah, it was comedy became LA in the 70s. And some of the biggest stand-ups of the 70s, all dudes on this list: Andy Kaufman, Richard Pryor, George Carlin, Steve Martin, Rodney Dangerfield, Robert Klein, and Bill Cosby. Mm-hmm. The elephant in the room. Does Bill Cosby automatically gets eliminated?
No, Bill Cosby, I mean, for his work, he belongs on the list 100%.
Okay, that's fair.
Behavior, he belongs in jail.
Yes.
Yes.
So I think the two, we're not judging his behavior, we're judging his comedy.
But based on the rules that we established before, the Smothers Brothers, you don't think stand-up comedians, you think television.
Right.
Well, with Bill Cosby, I don't know how many people primarily think
stand-up. I mean,
stand-up
adore him. Like, people who are, from his era and like I was always surprised by how many stand-ups admired Bill Cosby, because I was always into the show, but I was never into a stand-up, and I didn't really know his stand-up growing up.
Right.
Because I was such a Richard Pryor kid, because like we had a Richard Pryor album, and I just thought and I didn't have a Bill Cosby album, so I didn't really hear his stand-up. And because of the show, he was so clean on his show that I thought like, I like cuss words in my comedy.
He is one of the greatest storytellers, though.
He is. Well, I'll tell you, I went to see him do stand-up a few years ago. I had never seen him. I'm just a Pryor guy. Like, I was Pryor. I was Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
And I was not interested in him. And I was like, he's getting old and he's a legend. And I should at least go. I am a black guy who does comedy. I should at least be able to say I saw Cosby live. So that was the only reason I went, just to say I saw him. And I cannot tell you, it was the most brilliant thing I've ever seen on stage.
Yeah.
Stand-up comedy-wise. He did 2.5 hours sitting in a chair, and it was insanely, I mean, I don't know, the top of my head blew off.
Yeah.
And I was like, now I get it. Now I get why all these like Chris Rock and Seinfeld and all of them say like Bill Cosby is the greatest. And I'm like, it blew my mind. And then about 6 months later, all this came.
Yeah.
I think
all the bad stuff happened. And, I was so glad that I got in under the gun.
Yeah, I think you and I may have been, was it in Pasadena?
Yes.
You and I may have been at
Valentine's Day.
We were at the same show.
Get out of here.
We were both at that show and a couple got engaged on stage.
I don't remember, but probably.
Maybe. Yes. Or I was there the day before, but yeah. Yeah, he is incredible. And I had seen him maybe about 10 years before that, or when I was in college in like the late 90s at the New York State Fairgrounds.
Yeah.
And he again did like 2.5 hours sitting in a chair. And it was the guy, for as vile as a human being as he turned out to be, in terms of his craft in comedy, it was like technically flawless.
It was technically, I mean, he would do things like he'd call back something from an hour ago that, you know, in the most brilliant way. You're like, oh my God, how did he do that? How did he put this show together? So it was very impressive.
While we were talking about technically flawless and perfectly crafted shows, I want to jump into George Carlin.
Yeah.
Sure.
Another, like, I feel like we don't need to, like, once we pick the 70s, then we're going to have our ultimate winner.
Right.
That said, we will go through the whole thing. But George Carlin, that was one thing I noticed about him was there's nothing spontaneous in I mean, there is, as a performer, there is spontaneity, but the words that he says are so finely crafted. It's almost like a tree. I saw him live once, and that was what we were talking about afterwards. It was like a tree that he had the trunk that was his through line for the show. He would branch off and branch off and branch off from the branches, but he always made it back to that trunk. And then again, he'd be on this branch over here, and he would remind you with a callback of something that he had said 45 minutes ago. And just the way that he played with language, the way that Bill Cosby played with characters and stories. And I just he's also the only comedian that ever made me laugh with a 3-word joke, which was tonight's forecast, dark. I was like, a 3-word joke. That is brilliant. 3 syllables. And he made me laugh.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the 70s was the era. And those guys worked so hard because I think the 70s, the reason I think that it came up a notch was because by the 70s, people realized you could get rich doing stand-up. So then they started more seriously and really like do the work and stay, you know, they stayed in the clubs every night, hitting 2 or 3 clubs a night, crafting it, because if you could get on Carson, you were a millionaire.
Yeah.
So you might as well go out 7 nights a week, hit 2 or 3 clubs and put together a brilliant act so that you could get on Carson and get a TV show. Or get a movie. So, you know, the stakes were so high for them that those guys like George Carlin, you know, and Cosby, that they just put the years in.
Yeah.
And it was the whole 10,000 hours thing. And a lot of those guys, Steve Martin, a lot of those guys from that era, you can just see. I mean, it's obvious because you can't do what they did without those 10,000 hours.
Right.
Yeah. You know, it's weird to think of, I know Carlin, that was like his rise to prominence, and one of his eras of great strength was the 70s. But he continued in the 80s and into the 90s.
Oh, he started in the 60s and went through the 90s. Yeah.
Yeah. He started as like a clean cut suit and tie guy, and then the hippy dippy weatherman showed up. And then in the 80s, he like more conceptual stuff. And then he got hyper focused on language in the 90s. Yeah. And slowly became a really cranky old man. But totally owned it. And I really like I've listened to all of his stuff. I'm a huge fan of his. I think of his like late 80s, early to mid 90s as like his best run of material, where he had, everything was so honed and precise. And I saw him live too, I think in like 97. And it was like he was just performing the album that had just come out. And there was one moment where his foot got caught in the wire, like he got sort of tangled, that he improvised a bit that was very funny. But it was very clear to me, like, oh, he just wants to get on with it. He's got everything laid out exactly. He's going to follow the sheet music.
It's like a one-man play
in every city. Yeah. Like he knows all the notes.
To me, to be able to do that and keep it funny and fresh is so much more impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, I have my act. I know it's good and I'm going to do it. as opposed to like, oh, I'm not biting on that tonight, so let me switch gears. It's like, no, I have this honed, and I think that's impressive. I'm impressed by a honed act.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
And it took him a while to get to where he got too, with going from that. You mentioned how the clean cut comedian in the 60s and then letting his hair grow out. And it is that idea of, I don't have to do, you mentioned before, you work on your act, you do your 10,000 hours, you go on the Tonight Show and you get famous. There's that linear pathway, but he and Pryor both, like, they were that originally and then went, this is stupid. Yeah. I'm growing my hair out, or in Pryor's case, I'm going to go to, was it San Francisco?
Yeah.
And
Berkeley, I think he went to
Berkeley, yeah. And then really find who I am.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say that because Pryor had that same transformation where he was clean cut, and Pryor was like, he was on his way to a huge career. Like he had what every comedian wanted, which was a Vegas gig. And you guys probably know the story. And he burned that gig down, like famously, like basically burned his career to the ground by going on stage and saying, what BS this show was and this club and his life, and like just destroyed he was just like, you'll never work Vegas again, which means you'll never make money.
Yeah.
And then went up to Northern California, moved in with a trans woman whom he dated. And then, this is all in his book, by the way. Prior he wrote about all this.
What's it called? Prior Convictions?
This book, Prior Convictions. Yeah.
I never read the book. I just have seen the documentaries that they've made about it.
Yeah, I've seen all the documentaries. But
I'd love to hear from his words.
Yeah, it's his book that he wrote, Prior Convictions. And he talks about this and how he had this trans lover. And then he started, doing stand up there, because it was just like, it's so, if you guys know San Francisco is very artist friendly. They let you try things, and he sort of found his real voice. And then when he came back, people were like, wow, because, he was trying to be Cosby. Cosby was his hero.
Yeah.
And so he was trying to do Cosby. And of course, Cosby called him and told him not to cuss in his act when he started cussing. Like Cosby did to everyone. It's just like, not even like,
Though I do like that later on, Cosby calls Eddie and tells him not to cuss. And then Pryor tells Eddie, don't listen to Cosby.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
It was insane before you knew what you knew about Cosby that he was doing that.
Yeah.
And somebody else, Eddie told, anyway.
Yeah, like, he has that whole story
with Seinfeld about how Cosby called anyway, so. It's just so funny. But yeah, so.
Let's talk a little about, because we're talking about well-crafted acts, the anti-comedian from the 70s. There's two of them on this list, actually, who took the concept of what stand-up comedy was and had become and flipped it around. And that's Steve Martin and Andy Kaufman.
Yeah.
Steve Martin, who made a concerted effort to just be silly.
Yeah.
Which is really fun. His stand-up career was so short.
Yeah.
Because what he didn't, like, once it got to a certain size, it was like, okay, well then it's run its course. Like his version of stand-up. Oh yeah. Born Standing Up.
Oh yeah.
When he talked about how his act was so intimate that the jokes didn't work in these huge arenas. So he just stopped,
Even when he would put on a white suit just so they could see him from the back of the house.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah.
It is crazy.
He's so smart, and his writing since then, both screenplay and stuff like Pure Drivel, which is a really, really fun read of like short essays, including one where he uses, there's like a shortage of periods is the idea. And there's only one in like a three page essay, which is so just great concept. He delivers on it. And he was smart. He was at the same time smarter than the material that people were consuming from his act, but his act was way smarter than I think, you see like the banjo stuff and him being kind of silly, but it's hard to appreciate how precise and how smart everything he did was.
Yeah.
Like just to find what may seem like the simplest joke can be really, really difficult. And he was a master of that.
And the other one, of course, being Andy Kaufman, who I grew up loving Andy Kaufman. The wrestling stuff that was just bonkers. I read Zamuta's book. I went to the 20th anniversary at the comedy. Was it the Comedy Store? No, it was at the House of Blues. They threw a 20th anniversary because Kaufman said offhandedly one day, if I ever fake my own death, I'll come back 20 years to the day.
Yeah.
And everybody so it was 20 years to the day from his death, and everybody was expecting Andy Kaufman to walk in the door. Of course he didn't, but Tony Clifton played. Odenkirk did a set. A bunch of great comedians played. And then instead of taking the audience out for milk and cookies, as he famously did, afterwards they took the audience out across the street to the Comedy Store where they had set up Lucha Libre wrestling.
I can't remember where I heard this or I read it, and maybe you guys know the story already. But after the milk and cookies, he told them, meet me tomorrow on the ferry at 6 a.m. He was just saying it as a bit. He didn't mean it. He was just like, yeah, tomorrow. And then they said he got home and he started thinking like, should I go to the ferry?
No.
And he went. And there was like maybe just a handful, 2 or 3 people who showed up.
Oh, that for those 2 or 3 people though.
Yeah.
That's
the greatest story ever.
Good on him for showing up.
After the milk and cookies, he told them like, let's meet at the ferry at 6 a.m. We'll continue the party or whatever. And then he didn't mean it at all. And it's like, now should I commit to this? I love Andy. I'm sure I heard it from Mark Maron's podcast from Zamuda. I think
when he went on, God, what show was it? Was it the Friday night special? Was that the one where he went on and a midnight special? He went on midnight special and performed as Andy Kaufman a song called "I Trust," where he just says, "I trusted you" for I think 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like he just didn't care. It's pure Dadaism. Like I'm going to do what I think is interesting. I'm going to eat. Like we didn't even get to see his far out stuff, like doing his laundry or eating a bowl of potatoes on stage or falling asleep.
Reading The Great Gatsby.
Yeah.
The thing I think that he did so brilliantly for me is like, he was the first one that went, a laugh is a reaction. There's lots of reactions though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if your job is to get a reaction from an audience, he was like, I don't care if it's a laugh. I just want a reaction.
Well, I'll tell you this, like when I was a kid, I knew him from Taxi, of course. Didn't know his stand-up at all. And then he did a stand-up special on HBO. This would have to be in the, I guess, late 70s, early 80s for sure.
Mm-hmm.
In the middle of the show, he gets into an argument with somebody in the audience. Now, at this time, I didn't know that he did these bits that these huge, pranks and all that. I didn't know that.
Right.
Yeah.
But he gets into an argument with this guy in the audience. And then the guy says, at a certain point, is really mad and says, look, you asked me to do this bit with you. Like, I'm only doing it. Like, as if the guy's saying, like, I'm no longer doing the bit. Now I'm mad for real. And Andy then said, hey, now you're effing up my show, man. You messed up the show. And then it went to black. Like, it just went off. And me and my brothers were like, oh, we just saw something we weren't supposed to see.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's a reaction.
Yeah. I'm sure the whole thing was planned.
Sure.
But to this day, I really don't know if the guy got mad for real and they just cut it off.
So good. Did you guys ever hear The Day the Laughter Died? Andrew Dice Clay album?
It's one of the greatest. It's one of the best stand-up albums of all time. It's 2 cassettes.
Just for the ending, because he snaps.
Yeah.
It is, you hear Andrew Dice Clay quit stand-up comedy. At the end, genuinely snaps.
Oh, I gotta find
the end of the album is he just, he starts like inappropriately flirting with this girl in the audience, and then her dad starts like going after him, and then he starts going after the dad, and then he tries to get back to his jokes, and he just tells the same joke, the punchline to the same joke maybe 50 times, just screaming it into a mic, and he has one breath where he just goes, and then you're like, that was it. That's the end of stand up for Dice.
I give him so much credit for putting that album out, because it's like an hour and a half of failure at a small club. He refuses to do any of his nursery rhymes and stuff or anything like that, which is really interesting because I guess his whole deal was he was an actor who created that persona. Like, I have to get something going here. And he did it really well and I mean, it's hard for people who weren't alive or really aware then to understand how huge of a star he was. And that's just like, that was more of the, not even blue collar, but just like the more profane, the better. Like Tim Allen was a filthy comic, right? With children, which is a
Bob Saget
show was huge.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Bob Saget is filthy, hilarious, but but filthy. And he puts out this album that it is, I know what you're talking about. He's like, I'll give you a quarter back. And he does
get it. And he keeps repeating, get it
over and over again.
I just downloaded it. So
nice.
Good.
It is bonkers.
I just heard Rosie O'Donnell talking about the same thing. Like after she started doing her talk show and she go to Vegas and all of a sudden all these old people are there because they want to see, the Queen of Nice. And she's like,
yeah. Oh, are you in for a treat?
They are not biting on this material.
Oh.
Like, guys, I'm not doing my talk show for you. I'm doing my stand-up.
Yeah.
I forgot to put her on the list for the 90s. We'll have to remember to put Rosie on.
But yeah,
for
Kaufman,
sure.
I think Kaufman was such an original.
Mm-hmm.
And so, he stands out for that. I think he stands out for that. And then, of course, to me, like I said earlier, Pryor, this is what I would say about Richard Pryor. When Pryor started doing stand-up, nobody was doing what he was doing. Mm-hmm. After he started doing everybody, because I always say, if you're not stealing from Richard Pryor, you're not doing stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
You're wasting your time.
Yeah.
And even if you don't know whoever you're stealing from, if they weren't stealing from Richard Pryor, then you're wasting, like, everyone's influenced by Pryor, even if they haven't watched it. Because as you're watching now, they're influenced by Pryor, even if it's just because they're influenced by the comedians they watched.
Yeah.
So he changed the paradigm when he started.
When he you saying when he started, like early started, or when he came back from Berkeley? Yeah,
he came back from Berkeley. Yeah,
when the Phoenix rose.
Yeah, when he decided he wasn't going to be on the Tonight Show doing an act.
Yeah.
Even though he did the Tonight Show a lot after that. But.
What's your favorite special of his? Are you 79 or 82?
I'll say this one, but I'm Wanted. What is it? Wanted, Dead or Alive, or Wanted or Live and something. Mm-hmm. It's because I had that album, so I have it memorized.
Gotcha.
That was the only Pryor. That's how I got into Pryor.
Yeah.
My mom had a boyfriend who had that album. Me and my brothers eventually just kept it for ourselves. We played it.
You're dating our mom. We get to keep this now.
Yep. And anytime someone came over to our house, it was like, have you heard this? There you go.
Oh, man.
We did bits for our entire childhood. We did those bits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wanted is I'd have to say my favorite because of that.
Yeah.
But I love all of his specials. I just rewatched Live on Sunset because I think they just.
Oh, that's the 82.
Yeah.
That's so and that's good. The one, or no, it's 79 is the red suit.
I think you're right. That is 80.
And then 82, yeah. And then Sunset Strip was the one where he talks about catching fire.
Right. And I just rewatched that one because I think they put it up on Netflix. And I was just like, I hadn't watched it in a zillion years. I was like, as good as I think he is, he's blowing my mind.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
And like we were saying before, like he is the way he took pain and like, I mean, a human being's worst moment.
Yeah.
And God, it's one of the funniest things I've ever heard.
Well, I always tell people what made him so good was his vulnerability, because when a guy comes on stage and says, I shot up my wife's car because she wasn't going to leave me in it, what he's really saying is, I didn't want my woman to leave me. I wanted her to stay. I'm not strong enough for this woman to leave me.
Yeah.
And he's being the anti-macho guy. I mean, he talked about his drug abuse. He talked about his bad marriages. He wasn't trying to put on a persona of cool, and he ended up being the coolest guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's Undisputed comes out of the 70s. It's like, not even close, even as great a field it is. And if you've never seen Robert Klein do stand up, if you know him sort of as an actor or remember or know him as a Second City guy, his specials, he was like the first real HBO special guy in the 70s.
Yeah.
He kind of helped.
That's right.
He kind of helped put HBO on the map for comedy, and is a brilliant stand up. He just sort of stopped doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. For whatever reason.
I can easily at any moment do his "I Can't Feel My Leg" song at the drop. Yes. Anytime, anywhere, my entire life since I saw it, I've never stopped singing it.
It's so good. It's so dumb and so good and perfect.
Yeah.
And then Rodney Dangerfield also was a guy who was a regular sort of comedian and then adopted this persona and did it so well and was such a sharp joke writer that it went from he could go do a show and deliver a ton of great lines to a very successful run of films that was just based on an act that he had honed on stage. So, who he is in Easy Money, or who he is in Caddyshack or Back to School, which is like real strong 3-movie run. That's all just a version of his stage persona. So it serves as an extension in a way that not a lot of comedians, maybe Seinfeld is the other real example of this guy is going to take his act and persona to another medium and just adapt it. But it's not, Ellen is a talk show host now, but her stand-up is a little, like, to see her as a stand-up is a little bit different. It doesn't feel like the talk show is a direct extension of what she did as a stand-up, and neither was her sitcom in the 90s.
Right. I'd say even that, like, somebody like Andrew Dice Clay later on was borrowing from the playbook of Rodney Dangerfield in the, I'm going to give you the most easily digestible persona, and then I'm going to work from within that. And that's never going to change. And it is disrespected everyman who is the most childish, selfish person you can think of.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, easy to digest. I understand what that means.
Yeah.
So I think, but there's no way we come out of the 70s without it being Richard Pryor.
It's Pryor. Of course it's Pryor.
Yeah. Of course it's Pryor.
This is a great list. I mean, these guys are all just like, also I was born in 70, so I really know all these guys.
Yeah.
I know their acts, so well, and their work. And so they're so impressive.
Yeah.
Also, I do think the 70s were probably, for me, the best era as far as, because there were less stand-up comedians. So they were, the vast majority of them were all like so amazingly talented.
Yeah.
It wasn't hard to find a great stand-up comedian. They were all great comedians.
Another book pitch, if you haven't read it, I'm Dying Up Here, is fantastic.
Oh yeah. That's the one about the Comedy Store, right?
It's about the Comedy Store and the Improv and the strike that happened in 1979.
Oh yeah. With Jay Leno with the Che Guevara outfit. Another guy who is a
brilliant stand-up.
Yeah, but he's a brilliant stand-up. Like, you just watch him. He's in the same era as Seinfeld, where you watch it here, you're like, oh, this is what he was born to do. I don't care how successful he was with The Tonight Show or that movie he did with Pat Morita. Forget about that. It's all about how good of a stand-up he is.
Yeah.
Like, it's just his medium.
Well, Jay is I know he's not on this list, but Jay is such an interesting character, because I remember him saying how he, when he would go, cause he was at the Comedy Store when Pryor was there. When Pryor was a star, but Pryor was still coming in. He said he'd always asked to go up after Pryor because he wanted to make himself better. Nobody wanted to follow Pryor and go, I'll follow Pryor.
Yeah.
That's the only way I'm going to get good. If I follow the best, then I got to get better.
That's one of the great things that I love about him is that, Jay Leno was the worker.
Yeah.
He was like dawn to dusk writing and then dusk to dawn drilling.
And then in his era, all the comedians that were around him, they all say he was the best stand-up. David Letterman to this day says Jay was the best. He was the best,
Yeah.
Wouldn't he, while he was doing the Tonight Show, wouldn't he go down to Hermosa Beach to like Comedy and Magic and do his set? Like, he would start trying monologue jokes out just to test them.
Doing stand-up. He still does it. The entire time he was doing the Tonight Show, he was still doing
No kidding.
Yeah. He would do corporate gigs. He would get on the jet. He would do shows after he would tape the show. He'd get on the jet and go do a gig. And then he still does the Hermosa Beach gig. The Magic, the Magic.
Comedy Magic or whatever. Yeah.
I think he still does that every Sunday.
Have you guys ever caught, I know you and I have, but Jordan, have you ever gotten lucky and caught just a killer drop-in set?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw Chappelle a few years ago here. It's one of those things like the tickets went on sale on Tuesday, the show's Wednesday.
Right.
I just immediately bought them and then they were immediately sold out.
Of course.
It was like random little, it was like a Latin nightclub that
I love it.
booked. And the opening act was like first somebody I didn't know, and then Hannibal Buress. And we're like, oh wow, Hannibal Buress. And then Chris Rock.
Amazing. Amazing.
Like, wait, Chris Rock is opening for Chappelle. This is
wow.
Yeah.
That's a good lineup.
That was crazy. And when I auditioned for SNL years ago, They made us audition at a stand-up club. And so they wanted to see us in front of an audience. Mm-hmm. And Chris Rock just showed up. He didn't know that was going on. So he just showed up to do some stand-up because he was working on this material he was hosting the MTV Awards in a couple of weeks or something. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I was just glad I didn't have to go on right after him.
Right. Oh Did he pretend that he was auditioning for SNL?
Wait,
Hi, my name's Chris.
It was like, but somebody who was auditioning had to follow Chris Rock.
Yeah, that's rough.
That's rough.
Wow.
I remember we caught 2 great sets. We caught Chappelle as the day he got back from when he went on his sabbatical.
We were in a sketch group at Second City, which at the time, their performance space, remember when it was attached to the Improv? It was like that little lab theater on Melrose. So we're there rehearsing on Monday nights, and all of a sudden we hear a noise come from the main room because there's just a wall dividing us that sounded like a fire had broken out. Like it sounded like the amount of noise, it was like shaking the walls. Mm-hmm. And so we went to see it and then found out it was Chappelle coming back from Africa after he turned down Comedy Central's like $50 million offer. Mm-hmm. And just came back and took over the stage.
You and I have a different experience of that night then, Hal. Because I guess I was already at the bar, as I am wont to do.
Yeah, sure.
And our buddy John, who we had done comedy with, was a server at the Improv. And I forgot who I was sitting with at the bar, but he walks up to us and he goes, "Go in the showroom right now." And we went, "What?" And he goes, "Don't ask any questions. Go in the showroom right now." And we went in, and Dave Attell was on, who's a great stand-up. And then in comes, he wouldn't tell us why, and then in comes. So that cheering you heard, we were part of that cheering.
That's amazing.
The only other time I heard that I saw a drop in like that also was Dave Attell was on stage, and it was Chris Rock again. These guys are just like, I love that it's, Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle. They're workhorses. Those guys are stand-up comics.
Yeah, Chris and Dave are workhorses. They go to the small clubs and they do the work. Yeah. I was once years ago, I was at the Comedy Store. I must have been there to see a show. And, Damon Wayans dropped in. And this was in the 90s.
Oh my goodness.
Like peak Wayans.
Yeah, peak Wayans. The In Living Color was still on the air. He wasn't on it anymore. He had left, but his family was, because he was doing movies. But his family members had all just quit the show. Like Keenan had just quit. And he got on and he was doing stand up. And then somebody asked him to do Homie the Clown. And he said, I'm not going to do any characters from In Living Color. He said, because, my family all just left. And then he was like, "You guys want me to tell you what happened?" And then he told us.
What?
Yeah, he told the story about why they all quit. And it was because Fox started airing the reruns of In Living Color during prime time. And which was going to make them less valuable in syndication.
Right.
And the reason they did it was because ownership of the show was about to convert to Keenan. And so Keenan was going to be able to take the show, sell it in syndication, and make, Cosby dollars. And so they did it to screw him over. Just to hurt him financially, they started airing the shows during prime time. They started airing the old classic In Living Colors during prime time so that they would be less valuable.
That is diabolical.
Isn't it crazy? So
wow.
And that's also Chris Rock's story about, when he was at SNL, he was like, "I should be on The Living Color. I want to be on a black show doing black stuff." Then he went, and then all the Wayans quit, and he was there. Anyway.
Thank you for that sidebar. I love it. Good. Like, awesome. I can't believe I saw this performer. Like, I don't go to a ton of concerts. I love music. I love concerts. But this to me is like, these are the I'll see a concert and I'll be like, "That was a great show." But these are the memorable ones. Like, there I was. Like, it's always stand-up stories.
Yeah.
So let's jump into the 1980s. And again, tell me if there are people that I have missed on these lists. Because after I did the 70s, and wrote Pryor down, I didn't really care as much. But the 1980s gave us 2 absolute juggernauts.
Yes.
Eddie Murphy and Robin Williams. Robin Williams had started in the 70s, but he really blew up in the 80s. He was straight out of San Francisco and then did his, it was like the Met or some huge.
Yes, as he did a night at the Met in 86.
Night at the Met.
It's one of the greatest stand-up albums of all time. And the specials.
Off of your setup, which is when they peaked, when they were at their height.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you've also got the groundbreaking, so many of these. Now begins the run of the problematic. Well, no, Cosby began the run of the problematic. But there's some problematic performers on these lists, but they're undeniable in the world of stand-up that they had an influence. So Roseanne Barr, Stephen Wright, and Sam Kinison.
Stephen Wright, not problematic.
Not problematic. No. Roseanne being the only problematic one on that list.
Right. And I don't think Sam Kinison was necessarily problematic.
No, Sam Kinison, if you told him he was problematic, he would have loved it.
Yes, of course. He was problematic if you were dealing with him personally.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. He's an interesting guy in that he came from a really religious family in the South. Yeah. And people know him for like the ow, but he was so like, he was kind of the predecessor to Bill Hicks, in the 90s, in that he talked about really controversial stuff, had very intelligent, thought out opinions, but you remember his gimmick almost, handicapped him, and that you didn't even realize how good he was because everything around the aura around him kind of superseded his material in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, he was a Pentecostal minister at one point,
I didn't know that.
Hold a crowd. And, and as somebody who does go to church, most of the preachers who are really good this is a stand-up act. Like, you're funny. Like, they know that they have to have that to really reach an audience. Like, they're making you laugh the whole time. So it's really interesting. So I'm never surprised. Like Chris Rock, who his grandfather, I think, was a minister. So he said he learned his cadence from his grandfather. Wow. Like, you can see that in like really good comedians. Like, cause a lot of good comedians also have a point and a message and, let's make the world a better place or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a very easy transition I've seen with a lot of preachers was like, you could easily be a stand-up.
Yeah. And some preachers, have become stand-ups.
Oh, yeah.
Pastor, what's his name? He's put out a bunch of comedy albums in the 60s. They're generally sort of niche audiences. I think I have one of his, like, from my grandfather's record collection, which included a lot of Jim Neighbors and, those
It's just
guys.
An Irish Catholic priest like, I went to the store today and people wear funny hats. And then everybody just laughs at that.
It was Father Guido, but I don't know that he was.
I love Father.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. Stephen Wright, the absolute, one of the brilliant one-line Smith.
As a kid, I just remember watching him and just being so impressed with the way his mind worked. I was just, nobody was like him. So his cadence was what it was. And you're just like, how is he able to do this?
Yeah.
The confidence it has to take to do what he was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to just sort of do your deadpan thing. And he did a cool thing where he just let the jokes speak for themselves. Yeah. It was just pure jokes.
Yeah. He went under, as I like to say.
Yeah.
Most go over. He went under.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And his stuff was smart enough that it might take you a second. Like he understood. Mm-hmm. He knew when to press and when not to press, like when it was going to take a second. And you can see like the wave happen in the audience. He just understands still. I mean, he's still active. It's not like he's still alive.
Yeah. Right.
Look, we're going to miss you. I just had him killed.
Rest in peace, Stephen Wright.
Really
rest in peace.
What happened?
It's so sad. So sad.
Yeah. But we're going to miss him.
God, I hope he doesn't die before this airs.
He better not.
Yeah. We're just going to put this out right now, just in case. Stay safe, Stephen Wright. You're in our thoughts and prayers. He would never break.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's why I said so. Somebody like him, I really like. Courageous is the word, because when you go out there and these audiences, especially when you're not famous yet, when he was doing it before, the audiences and they're waiting for you to make me laugh and come out here and jump around. And he does that, and he's able to hold the audience. Because I guarantee you, when he started, it had to be really hard.
Yeah,
yeah.
So I was like, I don't know what you're doing, and boo, and shut up, and.
But he's yes, it's a guy that just walks out on stage and reads a list of jokes, basically. But the jokes are so good.
Smart. They're just smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Roseanne
Barr, I mean, groundbreaking, and the foresight that she had with what she did, I think, but I do think of her. I mean, I know that her stand up was like, here's what life is really like for a blue collar, every person.
Where her whole persona that she created of the domestic goddess
was
brilliant, because nobody was doing that.
Yeah.
And not the way she was doing it, you know, meaning like, I'm a poor woman with a husband and kids.
Yeah.
And my life is hell.
Yeah.
And because, you know, most people are poor and most people have kids. So it's like, it was so relatable, you know?
Yeah. And she even said later on about, I loved this. I was like, dang, that is some foresight. And I think we talked about this on our Best TV Moms episode, that she said later, and this is less about the stand-up, more about the sitcom, but later on, toward the end of the sitcom, when it was all about, you know, losing her job at the factory. And she said that I knew from day one that this show was going to be about the death of the union job in America.
Yeah.
And I was like, dang, unless that could be revisionist. Like, no, I totally meant to do that the whole time.
You're right.
But the idea of like that kind of foresight, you talk about like a comedian who wants to make a point, like that is playing the longest of long games.
And it's so hard. I mean, like the fact that she was able to get that show on the air because, you know, as someone who's writes for television and pitches and they want everything to be aspirational, you know, and like, you know, we want characters who the audience wants to be. They don't want to be a poor person struggling. It's like, you know, I don't know that that's true, but okay. Yeah. It's so hard. So the fact that they were able to pull it off, like, you know, the first few seasons of that show are so brilliant because they didn't mind ending on a downbeat, an episode or an act break on not a laugh, on a bummer.
Yeah.
They would just end on that. And you didn't feel like, wait, what's going on? What's happening? I thought this was a comedy. You're just in it with them the whole time. And then when you're laughing, they're the biggest laughs in the world, you know? A lot of that was her influence on that show, in spite of the, you know, reputation she had for being difficult. I always say, but the results are there. You know, the show was brilliant.
Yeah.
But let's get now to the two, I think, big juggernauts of the 80s, and that's Eddie Murphy and Robin Williams. Who do you want to talk about first?
Let's talk about Robin first.
Let's talk about Robin. I remember the day that he died. I was in New York City with my buddy Adam, and we heard it, and it was like the world was crestfallen. We were in the neighborhood right around the corner from the Comedy Cellar, and we were like, maybe it's time, you know, we'll go pay respect. And I guess everybody in town had that idea. And we went to the Comedy Cellar, and the guy at the door was like, we appreciate it. We're closing. We're shutting the doors. Like, whoever's in here now, we're shutting the doors. We're going to make this night a special night. We're like, all right, well, that's of course. So it was like just the influence that guy had. Again, this is another one of those, when you think of Robin Williams, do you think primarily of a stand-up comedian? Because so often stand-up comedy is a launching point. Yeah. You also, cause he's an Academy Award winning actor. I saw him on stage. He did a play with a buddy of mine.
Wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. And just by all accounts, the kindest and, you know, like had his demons, but just a wonderful, like I don't primarily think stand up. Whereas even now, 50 movies and a whole Saturday Night Live career later, I think of Eddie Murphy as a stand up.
Yeah. Because he was so iconic in that role, and those specials are so iconic. But I would just say about Robin, like to your point about nice guy, I'd never heard a bad story about him from anyone. Everyone's loved. Only thing I would say, you know, the fact that he improvised his act, which is so
incredible.
Incredible. Now I know he had the reputation of stealing other people's jokes, but in his defense, what he said, because he owned it, he said because he was improvising, he would just start. He wasn't doing it like, oh, I'll hold on to that. He was just like, I'm not going to edit myself.
Just totally unfiltered.
Right. Yeah. So I'm not. And so, you know, I don't think that's the case. If I'm a comedian, you took my joke. I don't care that that's your reason for it. I understand that, but I give him a pass in the sense that it wasn't mean spirited. It wasn't like, well, I'm Robin Williams, I'm going to steal your joke. Now it's mine. He wasn't trying to do that.
Right.
I wish he had policed it better, but I know it wasn't coming from a place of I'm out of material, so I'm going to steal your stuff.
Yeah, it was just he figured out, you know, artists talk about flow. He figured out how to turn on the flow tap brilliantly. And he didn't like the way most comedians would do. He didn't turn on the flow tap, sit down and write, and then edit. He just was like, no, I'll just turn on the flow tap once I'm on stage. It'll go.
In that documentary, they showed, because I never saw a lot of his stand-up, you know? Mm-hmm. And in that documentary that HBO did, they showed some of his stand-up, and my jaw was on the floor.
Yeah.
Because he was improvising. You're just like, I cannot believe what I'm seeing. It was so good and just so unexpected. And anyway.
Yeah.
His opening run in Night at the Met, which is on same as, I think they just took the HBO album and it's the same recorded version. I don't think they took different nights or anything. He goes on like he comes out and the first thing he does is, howdy, sorry, wrong opera house. And then goes through, that leads him on a run that you could tell took him away from, like even that wasn't linear. It's just, he zigs and zags around. Mm-hmm. And that's why maybe his like iconic role is the genie in Aladdin, which they convinced him to do by taking his stand up and animating it to show him like, this is how you can still be Robin Williams and we can turn you into a cartoon. Wow. So that like just unbridled ball of energy that goes like follows whatever shiny thing is in front of him, but still figures out how to create something linear out of that is, I don't know. I don't think there's anybody else who can do that or ever has.
Well, I think he was the heir to Jonathan Winters.
Right. Yeah. Which he owned that. He won.
Sure.
But I think he even surpassed it.
Yeah. Like he turned it into more, I never think of Jonathan Winters as conventional stand up more than like a series of character bits. Whereas Robin Williams built a stand up act that had little pockets. Like there's no doubt that Jonathan Winters' DNA is all over his act. But it is different. Like he took it and made it something completely different. I think Jonathan Winters had that same energy, but was doing something that was in the vein of what other comedians were doing.
Yeah,
and Winters would play a character for 3 minutes. Robin Williams would play a character for 3 seconds.
Yeah. The difference between stealing someone's act and being influenced by them, you know?
Yes.
Right.
And even wearing that influence, but you're not, it's like I always tell people like Prince and Michael Jackson worshiped James Brown, but they, and you can see the influence, but they totally created their own thing.
Yeah.
You know? So, but they were influenced. So I say that about Robin and Jonathan Williams. He was so influenced by him, but he definitely created his own path.
Yeah.
Eddie Murphy, on the other hand.
Well, I worshipped in the 80s. Yeah. I just worshipped my 80s guy.
Yeah. Also influenced by his predecessors and forged his own path.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But he did it like his stuff was crafted. Like he knew what he was going out there to do. He was just like, he was a cool alpha male.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like in a world of, comedians, like, here, let me tell you all about my problems and here's what's wrong with me.
Right.
And Eddie Murphy was, I am great. Yeah. Welcome to my show where I am awesome.
Yeah.
And he was so good at it.
That because he was so young, which meant he had less life experience. So he didn't have ex-wives and problems. Yeah.
No, he just had swagger.
Right. Everything had been going well for him.
Right.
At 15, all you got is everybody at 15 wants to seem cool.
Yeah.
So by 19, he was famous. So then that was his act.
Yeah. I am very cool and very famous.
He never got to go on like, man, my boss is a jerk down at.
Yeah.
He never had to be that guy because he never had that life. So it was all swagger and cool.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think that first album, which is Eddie Murphy Comedian, he was 19 years old.
Yeah.
Like
is that the one with the flower behind his ear?
Yeah. And it has Boogie in Your Butt on it.
Boogie in Your Butt.
Boogie in Your Butt is of course a 19-year-old wrote Boogie in Your Butt.
Yeah.
That is it sounds like a 13-year-old wrote it.
Yeah.
But it's so funny. But yeah, I mean, between that album, Raw and Delirious, you've got like a holy trinity of stand-up specials.
Well, it's so interesting because, by the time Eddie rolled around, I was like becoming a teenager. So I was all in. Like I was influenced by Pryor, but I wasn't even thinking about that at that point.
Right.
I was just like everything about Eddie Murphy. And then he started doing SNL and the movies. And I was just he was like, he's my favorite actor, my favorite comedian, my favorite everything. And then as I got older and started doing comedy and look back and I realized, well, Pryor's really my guy because Pryor's who influenced Eddie. and Cosby influenced Eddie, but I didn't know that. And I wasn't a Cosby guy, and then I sort of transitioned to Pryor because I learned more about him and how influential he was. And his comedy specials, in my opinion, are better than Eddie's. Mm-hmm. And I realized the difference was like Eddie is more of he's such a mimic. Like he does, impressions. He does a lot of impressions in his act. Mm-hmm. And, he's not talking about his life really. Like he does a little bit of that, but it's not really about his personal life and personal things. It's just jokes about, he does the stuff about his family and stuff, but it's not the personal stuff. So to me, Pryor had the edge in that. But then like for several years, I got to the point where, and I love Eddie Murphy. He's still like my favorite comedy movie star. I was like, Eddie's stand-up isn't like, I went back and I didn't really like his stand-up special. They didn't hold up to me. I was like, Eddie's not, he's probably good. He stopped doing stand-up and all that. That was sort of my attitude. Like, I was like, Chris Rock's better than him. Dave Chappelle's better than him. And, but then when I saw Eddie do Comedians in Cars with,
I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
You got to see it.
His Comedians in Cars?
Yeah, you got to see it. It's absolutely brilliant. And I go, oh, Jordan, shut up. This guy's so funny. Like just talking to Seinfeld, you can see that if he just stands up in front of a mic, you're just going to die laughing.
Yeah.
It was just like, yeah, he's funny. He can't not be funny.
He's just effortless.
Yeah. He's effortless. That's just who he is. And I knew that already, especially from his movies, that it is effortless. But it's like when I saw it, I was like, yeah, he should come back and do stand-up, but he would be hilarious. It's like,
yeah.
I'd like to see his take on it now, because I think, Jordan, you hit the nail on the head, which is he was so young and famous that even the beginning of, I think, Delirious and Raw are about him being young and famous.
Yeah.
But the bits I remember the most are his mother making him a hamburger. Yeah. So this is going to be just like McDonald's. This is Mama's burger, and him crying, like, because everybody had their mother try to make a homemade burger that had like peppers and onions and egg in it and stuff. And when he would do his drunk father, like anytime he did his drunk dad, because it felt real.
Yeah.
But I got the guy he's so good at comedy. When he came back and hosted SNL, and I know you wrote for the show, like I can't imagine how difficult it is coming up with material like that on a weekly basis. And to have an episode where a large percentage of stuff hits is great and something to aspire to. His episode is maybe one, and there isn't an episode I haven't seen. I'm a huge SNL fan. That's one of maybe two perfect episodes I can think of where everything worked. And it's because he showed up, and like, as great as he is at stand up, he went and did sketch, was great at that. Then he went and did movies, was great at that. He's just good at it. He does a party all the time and becomes the number one hit.
The drama, and he got nominated for it. I mean, he was great at that. He can sing. It's insane.
It's frustrating, really. It's annoying how effortlessly good he is at everything.
He's so talented that you would rather he have not made it, so you can go, how come that guy didn't make it? It makes more sense if he didn't make it.
Yeah.
And,
right.
What's really crazy, like when Eddie was at SNL, he was writing all his sketches. That's even like 19, 20, 21. He's writing Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood. He's writing James Brown's, hot tub, whatever, and you just go, so you could write at that age. It's just insane. I can't remember who it was, but who was doing, Update when Eddie was there? I can't remember.
Wasn't it,
was it?
God.
Brad Hall?
Brad Hall.
I don't remember who it was, but but Joe Piscopo is who told this story. He was doing, Eddie was about to do his first bit on SNL, and it was a update bit. And I guess Joe Piscopo, maybe they were doing a bit together, but it was him and Joe Piscopo. Eddie's 19, and he says, and they're like at commercial, but when they come back, they're going to do update. He said, Eddie's sitting there, and Eddie says to himself, wait till the kids at Roosevelt High see this. No, he said, the kids at Roosevelt High are not going to believe this. Like he's a year out of high school. He's
amazing.
He's like, my high school classmates aren't going to believe this when they see it.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. That's so dumb. It's so dumb and crazy.
So let me ask you this then. With these two juggernauts, sounds like we're leaning toward Eddie, but does the effortlessness of Eddie Murphy win out over the, drenched in sweat effort of the pure, open, unbridled mind of Robin Williams? I think I know the answer to this. I think I have mine, but I'll
say Eddie for the reason you brought up earlier, Mark, which is those stand-up specials are so iconic that you even though he hasn't done stand-up in like 35 years, everyone considers him a stand-up and wants him to, everyone's like, I want to see Eddie Murphy do stand-up.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference for me.
100% I was going to say the same thing. Yeah. That idea that like you wanted to come back. Robin Williams, when he stopped, it was like, yeah, that's great. You did it. There's like nothing left for you to do. And I think he did come back and do a set like, and I'm sure, and it was great because he's Robin Williams, but it just felt like it almost felt like a phase for him. Like that was the best way for him to play. And then he found other ways to play and then went off and did that. Eddie feels like I want to see him do stand. I want to see the 2020 or the 21st century version of Eddie Murphy now that he's older.
If he dropped a stand-up special.
Yeah. Well, he's going to. Yeah.
Is he really?
Yeah. If COVID ever, he signed a big $60 million deal with Netflix.
How did I not know this? This is complete news.
He was supposed to be on the road now developing his act, which he's not because of COVID. So I don't know what's going to happen with that deal.
Thanks again, COVID.
Right. Mad.
Right. All right. Let's move on to the 1990s.
Do you want to take a break? Let's take a break.
Let's take a little break.
Okay.
Just,
we've been going. Thank you, Jordan, for going through the long.
Yeah.
These are the conversations I'd love to have.
Good.
Oh, good. Good. Yeah. In memory of Stephen Wright, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll talk about the 90s and 2000s and we'll determine the best stand-up comedian of all time. And no one can argue with us. Yeah. R.I.P.
Stephen Wright better not die within 30
during this break.
Good Lord, please no.
Or within 30 days.
We are the host of My Brother, and Me, and now, nearly 10 years into our podcast, the secret can be revealed. All the clues are in place, and the world's greatest treasure hunt can now begin.
Embedded in each episode of My Brother, and Me is a micro clue that will lead you to 14 precious gemstones all around this big, beautiful blue world of ours.
So start combing through the episodes. Let's say starting at episode 101 on.
Yeah, the early episodes are pretty problematic, so there's no clues in those episodes.
No, not at all.
The better ones, the good ones, clues ahoy.
Listen to every episode repeatedly in sequence. Laugh if you must, but mainly get all the great clues. My Brother, and Me. It's an advice show, kind of, but a treasure hunt, mainly. Anywhere you find podcasts or treasure maps. My Brother, and Me. The hunt is on.
Macho Man to the top rope. The flying elbow. The cover. We've got a new champion.
We're here with Macho Man Randy Savage after his big win to become the new world champion. What are you going to do now, Match?
I'm going to go listen to the newest episode of the Tights and Fights podcast. Oh, yeah.
Tell us more about this podcast.
It's the podcast of power, too sweet to be sour, funky like a monkey, woke discussions, man, and jokes about wrestlers' fashion choices, myself excluded. Yeah.
I can't wait to listen.
Neither can I. You can find it Saturdays on Maximum Fun. Oh, yeah. Dig it.
Over the break, Stephen Wright died.
We have terrible news. Ken, bleep it. Could you just bleep all that? Just bleep everything.
We'll keep bleeping it.
Oh, God.
So then he doesn't even get a shout out at all. And he'll be listening to this going like, they didn't mention me?
All right. We've got some great comedians that came out of the 90s. Again, please add anyone that you think I missed. One of them might seem a little odd, but I'll point out why.
Really?
We have Chris Rock, Bill Hicks, Jerry Seinfeld, Ellen DeGeneres, Mitch Hedberg, Dennis Miller, Dennis Leary, and Eddie Izzard. I realize that Eddie Izzard is a British actor known primarily now, but the reason I put him so high up, I think that he and Chris Rock had the two best, Chris Rock had the three best stand-up specials of the 90s. Two of them were Chris Rock's and one of them was Eddie Izzard's, which is Dressed to Kill. And I think Bigger and Blacker is maybe the best stand-up. It may be the best stand-up set. My personal favorite, maybe the best of all time. Yeah. But let's go through. Let's talk about. There's a lot of people on this list. Yeah. Hedberg. I put Mitch Hedberg on there again because he's another one of those great ones that was just sort of gone too soon and did his. He sort of was the heir apparent to Stephen Wright's. God rest his soul. Stephen Wright's style of comedy.
Yeah. Oliver Shullum. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you guys think? Thoughts on this? Thoughts on the folks on this list?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not that familiar with Hedberg's stuff. I've seen a little bit of it, and Bill Hicks stuff. I've seen a lot of Bill Hicks stuff, but both of them I didn't discover until after they were dead.
Right.
So I never got to go on that journey and really see their stuff at the time. I don't know what I was doing in the 90s that I missed them, but
fair enough. You were a young man. You were working.
Yeah. You were a young man. I was struggling financially in LA, so
yeah,
I didn't have a lot of time to.
Bill Hicks, unfortunately, he's one of those guys that, he not a ton of people know him. His peak was like a year, 1992, I think that was it. But every comedian has been influenced by him.
Yeah. Bill Hicks is the one that basically Dennis Leary was influenced by, right? Yeah. Yep. Everyone compares the two of them, right? Is that
right? I didn't know, but yeah.
Okay. I might be thinking of the wrong person then.
No, they are similar. Yeah. He was like an angry conspiracy. Sam Kinison, I'd say they're in the same sort of family tree. He had 3 albums, Dangerous, Relentless, and Arizona Bay, all of which they kind of feel like concept albums. There's a concept album feel to them in his use of music in them, which is rare for a stand-up album. But also he feel like he's just on like one side of Art Bell. Like just one side of like the weird aliens are real, and I swear I've got one in the tool shed behind my house.
Yeah.
Just wants to take down the government, military industrial complex. Like that was kind of his bread and butter. But also just undeniably funny. Like he just knew his craft and he knew who he was. And that confidence can carry someone really, really far on stage. And that was, I think, that to me was like the allure of him that kind of pulls you in. It's like he's so sure of this.
That's a really good point you make, Hal, because I'm sure we recognize this when we see it. Like, especially in stand-up, confidence is all of it.
Yeah.
That's why, somebody like Johnny Carson can bomb a joke and get a laugh because he's like, I'm not scared of you guys. I'm like, I know I'm Johnny Carson.
Yeah.
Like, I can bomb a joke because I'm hilarious.
Yeah.
So you're going to laugh no matter, trust me, you're going to laugh tonight. And that's the hardest thing. I think that's the hardest thing for most comedians to get to is being able to walk on stage and have that confidence that whether I bomb or not, I don't care. Cause I forget who it was, but I was listening to an interview where somebody was saying how they saw Pryor in maybe it was probably the 70s. And he was coming to the Comedy Store like every night and just talking about his life. And it was not funny and it was terrible. And they're just like, Jesus, he is not funny anymore. It might have been the 80s. But then after a while, it started to get funny. Like after, and then it became his special and it was this brilliant special. It's like, but I saw it wasn't funny, but he didn't care. He kept coming in and talking about the same stuff and bombing. And people are just sitting there not laughing, but listening. It's Richard Pryor, so they're listening. But this comedian who was telling the story was just like, and I'm thinking like, what's he doing? Why won't he be funny? Oh my God, he's over. He can't do it anymore. And then it's like, oh, he had the confidence to not care that they're not laughing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to get there. I'm Richard Pryor. If I want to make you laugh, I can make you laugh. I'm trying to develop a new act. So I'm just going to talk about the stuff that I want to be in my act until it's funny. And I think that if you can have that kind of confidence, you can go a long way in stand up.
Yeah. God bless.
I love his new special, by the way.
Who's that?
Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen his new special. Look, Seinfeld is such a comedian's comedian too. Like I remember the years ago when that movie Comedian came out and it was all about him retiring his entire act.
Yep.
Like that guy, like and played clean, still plays clean, still working now, still has always been at the top of his game.
Yes. He's one of those guys, who was always at the top of his game. Always doing great shows. And if you watch his new one, it's my favorite. So because he does what he never did before that I can remember, which is he talks about his life also. Like the first half is like Seinfeld, what you expect, like talking about, what are, the whole like
observational,
where's the other sock, he's doing that bit.
Yeah.
And then he talks about his family and being a dad and a husband, and it's hilarious. It's just like, it's like a breath of fresh air to hear him do that kind of material. It's like really good. So, I mean, I love him.
And he's got a ton of, he is pure confidence, never doubts himself, even when something doesn't do well. He's, you almost expect because of his cadence that that he's going to be, that that almost feels like a timid cadence, but he could not be more from the start, does not ever seem to have experienced hardship on his way. Parents were supportive. Grew up at a good family in Long Island, decided he wanted to do comedy, was good at it, got better, and just any goal he had, walked away from his show when it was either at its peak or just on the downslope of it, and I don't need to go back. I did it. I'm not going to top that.
And walked away from his show when they offered him $5 million an episode.
Unbelievable.
That is bonkers.
$5 for one more season.
Oh.
But that lets you know how much money he already had in the bank.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
That's like somebody said to me, Jordan, we'll give you $200. And I'm like, I'm good. I offered Jordan $200 and he was like, later, I don't want to do your improv show for $200. All right, I guess he's doing okay.
Yeah, that's it exactly.
Michael was like, I don't need another $110 million. I'm fine.
I'll say one thing though about Jerry Seinfeld. His influence, all of these all the big ones that we're talking about have been huge influences. I think Jerry Seinfeld's influence might be problematic in that he launched 1,000 terrible careers.
Yes.
Because he was the first one to just observe the small things of life and make them funny. And then a lot of comedians went, oh, I'll just observe the small minutia of life. And then they forgot about the make it funny part.
Well, there's a lot of TV shows that tried to copy that as well.
Yeah.
Guys, stop.
Yeah. No one does minutia like Jerry.
Yeah, we already have one. We're good.
Stuff like that. Yeah. That's his voice. He didn't discover a bit and say, I'll do the minutia thing. Yeah. That was his truth.
That's just who he is.
Yeah, so that's how he saw the world, or how he sees the world.
Every time I use a hotel shower, I think of a Jerry Seinfeld bit with the tiny soaps where he's like, I love tiny hotel soaps. They make my muscles look bigger. That's so...
Yeah, exactly.
It's so dumb and pointless, but it makes me laugh.
One guy who's kind of on that, I keep using Family Tree, I'll just keep going, is David Brenner, who was a really great comedian and sort of had his heyday in the 70s. I think it was Gilbert Gottfried who would do a bit where David Brenner and Jerry Seinfeld are having a conversation.
I love that.
And it's just like, you ever drive a car? You ever go drive a car? Why do people drive cars? They are like the flip. It's that flip side of setting up maybe a similar joke. But I think if you were looking in a dictionary and you needed to have a picture for the word comedian, it would probably be Jerry Seinfeld, just because that's what he is. His television show, he was a comedian on a television show. He didn't disappear into the role the way other comedians who are maybe better actors.
He was playing Jerry Seinfeld, comedian.
Yes. And doing his best at it. Bless his heart.
He couldn't act and he didn't even attempt to.
Yeah.
I love he would break in scenes and it was like, he'd be smiling. That smile where he's trying not to laugh, but they leave it in.
Oh yeah. He has that sort of dumb half grin on his face for half of the episodes.
Yeah. Especially when it's something he's saying that's cracking himself up.
Mm-hmm.
He's saying it with that half grin. I was going to say, I do think there's a name. It's off here, Gary Shandling.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Shandling, because even though he was 70s and 80s, but 90s was when he was his heyday.
It's Gary Shandling's show was such a great meta. I mean, Larry Sanders was great. I loved the Larry Sanders show.
Yeah.
But just what Gary Shandling's show did, right down to the theme song being, this is the theme to Gary's show. Yeah. Gary called me up and asked if I would write a theme song. I've always been such a huge meta fan.
Yeah, me too.
So
Larry Sanders is so incredible. It's such an incredible. Both of those shows are incredible. And I just, Larry Sanders actually got a chance to be a show as opposed to it's Gary Shandling's show. Because I feel like if that had continued, it would have been on a pedestal.
Right.
The way Larry Sanders is. So.
Yeah. 100%.
Let's talk about another comedian from the 90s. They all have TV shows. Ellen, who's had multiple TV shows.
Yeah.
Ellen DeGeneres was one of those comedians that I loved growing up. Because I don't know if she played clean all the time, but she played mostly clean, as I remember.
Alcindor is clean.
Yeah, she's pretty clean.
But she was one that did minutia in the same way that Seinfeld, not in the same way, but as well as Seinfeld. But there was something about her minutia that wasn't commenting on the world. It seemed to me like she was always commenting on, look how similar all human beings are.
Yeah.
She would find things that were so universal where whether you're an imam in the Middle East or you're, a banker in Detroit, everybody has done I tripped on the sidewalk, but I'm going to do a little jog so you don't think I tripped.
Yes.
Yep.
I remember
her stuff was it's so wonderfully inclusive of all of humanity.
Yeah.
But she also has like weird, quirky stuff that's great too. She had a bit when she was still in the closet about dating a guy. And over the course of the bit, you realize she's stalking him. She's like, so I'm going through his garbage, but everything's nonchalant.
Right.
And such a great delivery. I do think her last couple specials, which are on Netflix, are so good. And one of them, she went out, she was just like, Portia never saw me do comedy, so I wanted to go out and do a tour so she could see it. And she's so good at it. And to see her do it now where she doesn't have to face the same persecution she did or the same, she can be herself. It's just, to me, at like a whole other gear she found. And I love to watch it.
Is the thing, like, even in her era, because she started before the 90s, she started in the 80s, but she hit her stride in the 90s. It was so hard for the women. Like they weren't, when the Tonight Show, bookers came, they would be like, no women, we don't know. We're not booking.
Yeah. I didn't know that they flat out just said that.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times they would just say, to your agent or your manager, like, yeah, we're not booking women, or we already had a woman this year.
Jeez.
Or, but clubs would do that.
Yeah.
We already have a woman going up tonight, so we don't need another woman.
Yeah.
And,
it's not a checkbox.
Right. And they would, so she had to deal with all that. And and women weren't getting TV shows when she started. So her goal was never like, I'll get on there and I'll get on, I'll do stand up and I'll get on Tonight Show and I'll get a show. Like that couldn't have been her plan. She was a pure stand up for the love of it,
Yeah.
And luckily time got on her side at a certain point when they started doing that more, and those doors started to eventually open because of women like her,
Yeah.
It's interesting to think if it had been 20 years earlier or even 10 years earlier, it might have been Elaine Boozler who took off, who's another brilliant comedy writer, also great stand-up.
Yeah.
Boozler, Rudner was another great,
Rita Rudner.
They all, and there is sort of a really fun thing. I don't know if Elaine Boozler did it as much because she seemed a little more brash. And I don't know if it was Ellen or Rita Rudner or even Wendy Liebman that started this. Like you mentioned that, so I'm going through his trash. There's this certain cadence of throwing away under your breath the
Wendy
punchlines.
Liebman did that. Yeah.
Wendy Liebman did it, but famously, she was, I think, the master of it. But yeah, I mean, it's just, there was something about that I loved. And Ellen kind of that sort of understated where it's not, this is the setup, here's the punchline. I'm going to squeeze a thought here in the middle, and then I'm going to keep going with the thing. But the thought in the middle was the punch. You know what I mean? It's just a fun way to craft jokes that I think they found.
And I would say Elaine Boozler is another one because she was huge for a while. I mean, she was everywhere on anywhere they had stand-up specials on TV. She was on that show. So she was huge, and definitely if networks were giving women comedian shows, then she would have had, and maybe she had a pilot. I don't know. She probably had a few pilots for all I know, or a few development teams. But yeah, she was, because I remember as a kid, I knew who Elaine Boozler was.
Sure. And then, Dennis Miller, I also have on this list, his sort of introducing, at least to me, or popularizing when he was on SNL doing Weekend Update, that super, super cerebral, I'm telling jokes for 5% of the viewing audience. But I'm not going to dumb what I'm doing down to your level. I'm going to make you climb up to mine. And if you have to grab a dictionary, go ahead. I'll wait.
But what was good about that was, even though he was doing that, because I didn't know those words or some of those references. I was still in on the joke. I still knew what he was doing. So I knew he'd make his little like punchline or his aside. And I would know that, that has something to do with whatever this picture is he's making.
Right.
And that's part, and also the fact that I don't know what that is part of his joke.
Yeah. Yep. His I'm smarter than you.
Right. It was part of his joke was that, you don't know what I'm saying. So it's that thing what I'll say to people sometimes, like writers or comedians or, sketch people. You got to let the audience in. Right now, this is all you and what you want to do, but the audience doesn't have a way in. And he was able to do that, but also let the audience in. And I think I don't know how he did that because it was pretty great.
Well, part of it, like there's a music to every stand-up's delivery, not only their rhythm, but the music. And he had a very specific, and as soon as he got to that, you knew it was a laugh and you knew like you were conditioned to do it. And I'm sure SNL was a big help to him because that was the way he did Weekend Update. So when he would go out on the road, they would see the same rhythm, even if it was different material. And they knew like you're conditioned. He was very good at conditioning people to laugh. If you look at a transcript of some of his stuff, it probably wouldn't jump off the page.
Yeah.
But him delivering it took it to another level.
Yeah.
Now, the guy who will probably come out of this decade, do you think we've seen the best work Chris Rock has to offer? I feel like he still has so much, like, I'm excited to see what he's going to do next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My Chris Rock story is this. The first time I ever saw Chris Rock was on, now go with me. It was on Arsenio, but not the Arsenio Hall show, but when Arsenio took over for Joan Rivers.
Yep.
Remember that? Joan got fired and then they brought Arsenio. It's how Arsenio ended up getting his own show. Arsenio took over and then the ratings exploded. And Arsenio, I think he had Eddie on. And Eddie brought on Chris Rock saying, I saw this kid. He's really funny. And and they were like, he's 17. I'm like, what? I'm 15. I gotta go. I should be. And he came out and he did his act and I thought he was funny as hell. I just loved him. I was so like impressed. So then after that, I just always followed his career and I kept waiting for him to become this huge star. And he would come out with stand-up specials and stand-up albums. And I was like, why is no one talking about Chris Rock? Why is it even after SNL? I was like, what? And then when Bring the Pain came out on HBO, the first HBO special, I watched it and it was so brilliant. And I said to myself, I'll never forget, I said to myself, if people don't become Chris Rock fans after this, I'm done. I'm done trying to make Chris Rock happen. People are stupid. They don't know what talent is. And I'm done trying to wait for Chris Rock to break. And then of course he did. And, but I was like, I thought he was that brilliant. From the first time I saw him, he wasn't, trust me. But but I guess I saw the kernel in there and I was so happy when that happened for him. I think he's what he's become through his stand-up specials is America's conscience. Yeah.
And America's common sense. He's Jiminy Cricket. Yeah. He's the world's funniest Jiminy Cricket because it's not all stories from his life. It's, hey, everybody, this is what we are getting right and this is what we are getting wrong.
Yeah.
And I can't think of anything that I disagree with him on.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, in every way that he says we're getting this thing wrong, he's 100% correct.
Yeah.
And
he's smart.
He's so like, it's going to be tough for anybody to beat Chris Rock coming out of the 90s for me. Cause like I said, Bigger and Blacker, I think is the perfect stand-up special. Bring the Pain is amazing. Yeah. It's the other one that, like I said before, the three best stand-up specials I've ever seen are, or from that era were these guys.
I would argue that everyone on this list would say Chris Rock. It should be the 90s that we pick. I don't think anyone would say no to that.
But I did want to give a shout out specifically for my friend Barbara, who I know is listening because she listens to every episode and gives me her opinions on them. Afterwards, she will yell at us that this is, I think we should change the title of this to Best American Stand-Up.
Okay.
Because we really, like, there are, like, I know I'm going to get a text that's like, how can you not mention Tim Minchin? But I do have Eddie Izzard on this list because I think Dress to Kill is a pretty flawless stand-up special.
Yeah. Billy Connolly also is a great stand-up.
Billy Connolly's brilliant.
Yes, yes.
And I'm sure there are performers in other languages who we don't know that are the giant megastars of their language. But
I think you have to worry, Mark. I'm sure no one's going to think that it's decided. They decided and I didn't even get a chance.
Oh, you'd be surprised, my friend. You'd be surprised.
Decided, and now it's over.
Yeah. Well, look,
I can't talk about it anymore.
Once we decide, it's set in stone for all time.
No one else can get in. That's it.
Look, this conversation is deader than Stephen Wright. We're done. You can't. You can't.
And then theory, I'll just say about Dennis. What I loved about Dennis was his manic energy and the anger and how funny it was.
Oh yeah.
Like you'll see some comics who are doing anger, but you feel like you really are angry and it's off-putting. Like you're mad. But he was playing the anger, but he played it where you knew that. Like, again, like I said about Dennis Miller, it's like, but he's letting the audience in on it. We're in this together.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's
attacking you.
It feels cathartic. Like, even in film form in The Ref, which is a great Christmas movie that not enough people are talking about. Just him getting upset and like punching things or putting to break something. You're there with him. You're like, yeah, this is real annoying. I would be that mad too. So he's expressing it on your behalf, which is really nice.
His pure anger is always hilarious, but it's got to be Chris Rock coming out of this.
Yeah,
absolutely. Coming out of the 90s.
Chris more than earned that.
All right. Now it gets a little trickier when we move into the 2000s because I've kind of just lumped 2000 to 2020 all into one group because this is in our adult lifetimes, and frequently a lot of these are people that we've either seen or I know you've worked with a ton of them, Jordan, like some of the greats of the past 20 years, So I'm sure you'll have some insight on some of these as well, which I'm very excited about.
Yep.
I will say, so from the 2000s, here's our list. We have Dave Chappelle, obviously, Louis C.K., problematic. Now I told you there'd be some problematic ones on here. Undeniably a brilliant stand-up. Sarah Silverman, Wanda Sykes, Patton Oswalt, Zach Galifianakis, Hannah Gadsby, and of course our dear friend, Paul F. Tompkins.
Mm-hmm. I had to put him on there just because I think he
deserves to be on there.
He absolutely does.
To be on
He's
there.
One of the great storytellers.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that Paul's not going up every night.
No,
he's not doing a ton of stuff. But when he comes out with something, his just anything after Impersonal is good too. That's him like retiring all of his old bits so he can move in a new direction. And then his run of albums after that, I think it's Freak Wharf, Crying and Driving, and Laboring Under Delusions. I think is like top to bottom, one of the best stand-up albums that you could listen to about him having different jobs. Mm-hmm. He's like so good. Yeah. He's not Eddie Murphy. He's not Chris Rock. Like he's not up in that stratosphere, but
he wasn't the game changer, but he's a brilliant,
unbelievable.
And it comes down to the fact that he's funny.
Yes.
That's the number one thing. If you ain't funny, I don't care how smart you are.
Yeah.
Or, you know what I mean? How brilliant you are, how you can write a joke. If you ain't funny, nobody wants it.
Yeah. Yep. Carlin actually said something that I thought was great, years ago in an interview. He said, I don't get it when comedians say like, well, I want you to laugh, but I also want you to think. He's like, I don't care if you think. It's like, I want you to laugh and I want you to know that I'm thinking.
Yeah. I agree. I've said that many times because a lot of my writing is, I'll tell people like I do, it's social commentary because that just comes naturally to me. It's not like I want to say something. It's just based on my life and my experiences. So it becomes social. I said, but if I have to choose between social commentary and making them laugh, it's the laugh all day. They came to laugh. They didn't say, I want to go to see this comedy show, but I hope I learned something tonight. No one goes to a comedy show thinking.
Right. Maybe those in the 50s and 60s going to see Mort Saul.
Right. Like people go to see they go to a TED Talk if they want to learn something and not going to a stand-up show.
Yeah.
Hal has added a couple more names to this list just now that I definitely agree with. John Mulaney, Demetri Martin, and Tig Notaro.
Well, I'm a huge Mulaney fan.
Of course,
it's to get me to be a fan of comedians that I didn't sort of like grow up with. Because I always feel like, hey, that's not comedy. But Mulaney, I saw Mulaney at Largo. I went to see a show there and it was like a bunch of stand-ups. And John Mulaney came up and I knew who he was, but I'd never heard his stand-up. And I was like, oh, he's really funny. But I thought he probably just had a good night. Then I came later and saw someone else's show, and he got up and he was killed. I was like, oh my God, he's really funny. Then I went and listened to all his albums.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's like, so good. My introduction was his first SNL appearance when he did, like, what a great hook to have. A comedian who doesn't hate things. His whole hook for that bit was, I love it.
Yeah.
And it was just
he's
like,
so good.
He's so good. And he's so sort of unapologetically optimistic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like he's weirdly, somehow he's the cynical optimist.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great description.
Which is an impossible thing to be.
Yeah.
But somehow he does it.
He does it. He's so good. He's so good it makes me crazy because I feel like I shouldn't like you this much. You're not from the 80s. I shouldn't want to see everything you do.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he said when he talks about the Catholic Church, because growing up Catholic, when he talks about the Catholic Church changing your lines, like, when did they change our lines? I had that same thought. I was like, because I remember thinking that because it had been a decade since I'd been to church, and I went and I was like, we're saying different words now. And then here's this comedian, an exact experience that I had. The funny version.
I love the bit about the Catholic Church when he talks about how his mother asked him if his wife, who's Jewish, would convert. And he was like doing his like, how would I do that? Like, okay, there's a Catholic Church. Don't Google us.
Then we have Dimitri Martin, who is, of course, grandson of the late Stephen Wright.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Well, I mean, comedically, the grandson.
Oh, okay. I got you. Okay.
The dad in the middle being Mitch Hedberg.
There you go. I got you.
But another great comedian who, just is like, here is, I am deadpan, and here is jokes in their purest form. Heck, here's a blackboard behind me. Another one on that same line that I would say who is brilliant now, who's sort of in that same vein, is Aparna Nancharla, who does it with PowerPoint presentations. Like just sort of her quiet, shy persona and these insanely funny PowerPoint presentations. Like they're presenting jokes.
Yes.
Regardless of how they do it, they are just, well, I know I'm not the most charismatic person in the world and I talk kind of quietly. So here's my way of presenting my brain to you, which is why so many of them are so good on Twitter.
But on the, if we, on this list here, I would say obviously Dave Chappelle is one of the greatest comedians working today.
Of course.
Yep.
By far, probably. Louis C.K., who I never liked personally, but I did love his show. Mm-hmm. I mean, I shouldn't say I didn't like his stand-up that much, even though he has one of my favorite jokes of all time, that I tell people all the time, but I'd say I give him credit for it. But, his show was so brilliant, so I fell in love with him because of that show. But
Louis or Lucky Louie?
Yeah, Louis.
Louis, yeah.
Louis? Was it, or just Louis?
Yeah, it was Louis. It was just Louis, yeah.
The song was Louis.
Right.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'll be honest with you. He always rubbed me the wrong way. And he always came across to me a little too arrogant.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd never appreciated the fact that he felt it was okay for him to use the N-word in his act.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even though I don't believe in censorship, I don't care if you use it, but he wore it as a badge, like, I'm being brave. And I'm like, no, because you're a white guy doing it in front of an all-white audience.
Yeah.
So they don't got a problem with it. Do it at the Apollo. If they laugh, it's funny. It's funny. You get them to laugh, it's funny. And I'll laugh, because I don't care if you use the word, but if you're using it in a way that is just to be shocking or to prove that words shouldn't have meaning, anyway, I don't want to get on a soapbox about that. But I do think he was very talented, but I never was that much into his stand-up.
Well, and also when all the accusations came to light, you were like, oh yeah, he's a complete dirtbag. And I'd heard a rumor like a year or two before it broke. He corners waitresses in comedy clubs. I was like, no, I don't know him. Like I just heard it sort of offhand. I was like, oh, that's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go back and listen to his act, it's like the end of The Usual Suspects. The clues are all there.
Yeah.
That's who he was this entire time, both in his actions and in how bad his apology was. Cause his apology was like super privileged. Like, I understand that I'm very powerful, like that. It's all there. And it makes his stuff worse going back to it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, again, like some of his stuff I thought was really funny, some of his takes, but because I always got this bad vibe, like, for example, and I don't want, whatever, but like when he did his joke at SNL, his opening monologue, did the thing about pedophiles. Mm-hmm. And it was a brilliant joke. I thought it was a great joke.
But funny bit, yeah.
It didn't feel right coming from him because I always felt like he just seems like a gross guy. And not that I thought he was a pedophile because I didn't, but I just felt like that's not your joke to tell.
Right.
Sarah Silverman can tell that joke to me. Like, I can hear Sarah Silverman tell that joke, and I would love her for it. But like with him, I was just like, you just seem like a jerk.
Yeah, and that was his whole act was, I'm a gross, awful dirtbag.
Right, but the problem was it turned out to be true. And it's like,
exactly.
It's true. There are plenty of gross, awful dirtbags who are stand-up comedians, but that's not their act.
Right. Let's talk about Sarah Silverman because she is one of the greats.
She is. Yes.
Mm-hmm. I think that like the way her brain works and she's got, and that sort of high pitched kind of cutesiness that she figured out how to play so perfectly. I thought her TV show was great. It was a lot of fun, but as a stand-up voice.
Yeah, she's another one of those pure.
She's a pure stand-up, and she will say offensive things.
Oh yeah,
she will say offensive things to be offensive. But like you said, she could get the laughs at the Apollo because she could crack that smile afterwards. She's so cheeky.
She is
in the way that she says brilliant, brilliant things.
And what I like what you said, like about she has sort of that cutesy kind of voice she does, which like she sucks you in with it and then makes you feel dirty for it. Like, oh, come on, I thought we were safe. Yeah. You made me laugh at that. Now everybody thinks I think that's funny. It's like, I'm great at that. And she's definitely one of my all-time favorites, comedians. Yeah. And matter of fact, it was one of her shows that I think I first saw John Mulaney do at Largo. Like she was emceeing it and bringing people out. And I try to go see her anytime I can. And I try to watch anything she does because she just never disappoints.
No. And she does a great job of pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
Like she has pushed stand up so far, not just in the way that it's, what she says a lot of times is dirty and that coming out of that voice is funny, but she says, incredibly astute, frequently really dark things and brings you along and things that other comedians haven't talked about before. She can get away with because it's packaged in this sort of bubbly sounding persona. Yeah.
And I feel like if Sarah were a guy, she'd have she would have at least gotten a chance to have a huge movie career because she's that good of a stand-up. And just the fact that, she got her show on Comedy Central, which was great and was a great show. But that, the fact that she didn't get these opportunities to have leads in movies as funny as she is, when so many guys who are a lot less funny than her got at least 2 or 3 shots.
Right.
A lead in a comedy, just speaks to the sexism that they have to deal with, in the stand-up world.
Yeah.
That's true. And also it's interesting to watch her voice evolve over time. She's never stopped being offensive and pushing the envelope, but she also seems to understand what it means to push the envelope in 2020 versus how she pushed the envelope in 2000 or 2005, where it's like, hey, maybe some of the things I said then are not things I need to say now. I'm going to find new ways to be true to myself. And that's the mark of like her dedication to her craft.
Yeah.
And just how good she is. What happens if you take away the like something that may have been like a crutch or a tool that she used before and she's still able to not miss a beat and maybe get better?
Well, the best artists, their work matures with them.
Yeah.
They don't hold on to their heyday and try to keep repeating that and trying to recreate that moment. They go, I'm older, so the stories I'm telling are about that. And that's it. I don't care if you're a songwriter or whatever. It's like, if you're like, 66, I don't want you trying to write me a dance club hit.
Right.
You're writing a song about what it's like being a grandparent who's, staring at retirement and mortality. And, I want my art, the artists I love, to mature with me. And the things I'm dealing with, I want them telling those stories,
And I think about the bravest maturation she could have done was I Love You, America.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, for someone who is so like, I mean, she was, Bernie rallies and like she does not hide how she feels about the world at all. And for her to create something like I Love You, America as like, that's her maturing. That's her going, okay, let's heal. Let's figure out how to heal.
And that's maturation. That's her, I've grown up, so I'm not going to just say, forget those guys, Yeah. Let me try to see if we can, talk to each other. Yeah. She's great.
We haven't talked about Wanda Sykes yet. Wanda Sykes is
so funny.
She's just purely funny.
Have you seen her last special on Netflix?
No, I haven't yet.
No.
Again, I'd say I think it's her best yet.
Again,
it's because like she's a woman of a certain age at this point. So her material is just so deep, so much deeper, and talking about her kids and her wife and all. Mm-hmm. It's just like, it is just so relatable, but so funny. And she talks, political and all that too, but she's so good. I mean,
her voice always sounds to me like she's smacking the back of your hand.
Yeah, of course. That was what I mean? Persona for so long anyway.
Yeah.
And, but it has matured. And that's kind of what we were saying about Sarah. It's matured.
I'm not familiar with her newest, special. I got to check it out.
Yeah. If you like her, I think you'll really like, cause I think it's her best special yet.
Yeah. Then we've got, of course, some more of the Largo nerds. A lot of Largo nerds on this list. Yeah. Largo's one of those great venues that there's so many people that are so closely associated with it. And I think it's because Flanny curates it. It's not, you don't rent that space.
Right.
You know what I mean? Flanny asks you to play there.
I like to book some dates.
Yeah, no, you don't book dates. And that's Patton Oswalt and Zach Galifianakis. I can mention them in the same breath because they're kind of,
the same era.
Same era,
I mean, I love both of those guys.
Yeah, I think,
I discovered Zach when he had his short-lived VH1 show.
Yeah, I remember that.
I'd never even heard of him before. And then it was like he would sit at the piano, and I was like, who is this guy? I'm like, oh my God, this guy is so funny. Mm-hmm. Like, how did they find him? Because he's not famous. So how did he get his own show?
He was a Largo guy. I saw him first at Largo doing Kevin Nealon's show in 2001.
Wow.
And he was middle of the lineup, hopped up after Arj Barker and dropped an N-bomb in a joke, but
back when you still could.
Back when it was okay. But I was like, who is this guy who just did that and knew it would kill, and it did kill, but it stung.
Right.
And then he went on to just do the most bonkers, 7-minute set I've ever seen.
He's so good.
Yeah.
It's hard. Like we were talking about Andy Kaufman and Robin Williams. It's harder to do a bonker set that is good, clean, and makes sense. Cause there are guys who will go up and they'll be funny and they can be and they'll be bonkers, but it doesn't feel like they've crafted anything yet.
Right. Yeah.
And so to me, that has to be the hardest thing to do.
Yeah. Like his tearing sheets off of a giant easel while dressed like Annie.
Yeah.
And it working. You're like, what is this insanity that this man is doing?
Because the audience, when they see you, when you come out and that's what you're going to do, the audience's first thought is, I don't want this.
Yeah.
I want a microphone and I want you to tell me some jokes and make me laugh. I don't want your little performance art piece. So when you can get them to get on board with that, that's hard. That's why more don't do it.
Yeah.
Like if I drag some prop on the audience, I've lost the audience at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. But God, he gets them. And Patton, of course,
brilliant.
Another one of those brilliant sort of voices of reason for America. And the voice, the first one on this list, I think that is unapologetically the voice of the nerds.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like a weird flip side of the Dennis Miller coin in that he'll make Captain Beefheart references in his bits.
Yeah. And
even if you don't know who Captain Beefheart is, you're going to laugh at it because of he's got such a great delivery, but he's also, the first special he did back after his wife passed away was so good. He's so personal. He manages to create this hybrid that is both very personal to him and therefore makes it relatable to all of us because he's talking about somewhat common experiences, and then also super nerdy political stuff, super nerdy, just regular nerdy stuff. His bit about the Star Wars prequels is so good.
Yeah.
And such the way he lays things out, not only is it funny, but it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't seen that one yet. I can't wait to watch it.
It's great.
But like, when you talk about like making a Captain Beefheart reference that not everybody's going to get, but they still get it. Like they get what they know, they get the joke, even if they don't get the reference. And like, as a television writer, I can't tell you how hard it is to convince, the powers that be that you'll get that. No, like, I don't know if everyone will get that. It's like, they don't have to get that. Like, they don't have to know the reference to get the joke. Like, they actually will appreciate it more. This, like, if you do it this way, it'll be appreciated more. But if you just go straight forward, then it's like, well, yeah, they know what that is. I don't know how funny it is. And so many times you lose that battle and you end up not doing a joke at all. Like, you just straight lines, like, oh, well, that's funny. So it's such a hard, so it's great when, as a stand-up, because you can do what you want. But that's always my thing. It's like, don't explain it. Don't explain it. People, like, in my opinion, studios and networks, they underestimate the intelligence of their audience all the time. Because I'm like, if you get it, they get it. You're not smarter than them. You just aren't. You're not dumb.
Yeah.
The vast majority of people aren't as dumb as you think they are. They just aren't. We all pretty much know all the same stuff. We all grew up in front watching the same shows, learning the same stuff in school. So pretty much we all know all the same references. And even if I don't know exactly what Captain Beefheart is, I probably have an inkling of, oh, it's a musician, it's a thing. I heard it somewhere, and the context in which you're using it tells me enough about it. But that's a really hard thing to convince. So I love when comedians do that. Like my wife would watch Family Guy with me, and Family Guy does all these pop culture references that my wife does not get because she didn't grow up in front of the TV like I did. But she would laugh the whole time. And this is me going like, well, see, the reason that's funny is this. And then she'd be like, what you don't know about that is that, Tom Cruise did Vanilla Sky but it was a Spanish version of it first. And
oh my God.
And she's like, I don't like, shut up, you're ruining the show. I'm just like,
nothing ruins.
Realize I do the same thing to my wife when we're watching something. God. I'll pause it.
Oh, how?
And like nobody likes pausing. Like I get like if she asks a question, I'm like pausing it, and I'm like, oh, I really want to continue watching it. But when I'm like, I pause it, and then I turn like, that reference is from, and I've never wanted to punch myself in the face more than right now.
I need you to appreciate this on the level it deserves.
Yes.
Right.
You're laughing, but it's deeper than that. There's more. There's more. There's jokes inside the joke. There's some.
Here's a PowerPoint.
Nothing kills comedy like analyzing it. So let's keep analyzing it. Just one more thing on Patton Oswalt that I love about him is it feels to me like he is like that guy, aside from the fact that he's Patton Oswalt and he's a super famous comedian. If you didn't know that and you were just seeing him for the first time, it seems like the only room where he is high status.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's a lot of comedians that's kind of the thing, but he does it so well where it's like, all right, well, this is my domain.
You always have a thing I say about like comedians, actors, when people talk about like egos and all that, and you're like, well, he's not necessarily. And I say, here's the thing about being on stage. Being on stage is, I'm saying as someone who wants to go on stage and do a show is, I want everyone to come to this event. We're going to turn off all the lights. You guys never talk. Turn on the lights on me. There's only going to be a light on me, and I'm the only one who talks. And that's a fun night out for me. That's who you're dealing with. So they talk about like, that guy has such an ego. I'm like, well, yeah. He said, turn off all the lights. No one else talk. Turn a light on me, and I'm the only one who's going to talk. And when I stop talking, I want everyone to go home. It takes an ego to want to do that. That's the ego. Like whatever I have to say is so good and so interesting. It's like going to a party and someone saying like, I know this is a party, but no one's going to talk, and you guys are all going to sit in the dark, and then I'm just going to hold court.
Oh my God. Well, here's someone who, one more on this list before we talk about who is probably going to come out of the 2000s on top. Hal mentioned Hannah Gadsby, famous for the comedy special Nanette, where she announced her retirement from comedy and has a new special coming out next week, I think. Right.
It was like an introduction to the world and her retirement.
Yeah. Yeah. Which like that, she's sort of a cool, weird outlier in this for that reason that that star shone so bright, so quickly, claimed it was going to go out.
Yeah.
Whether or not, I'm sure with every intention of doing that, of being like, no, this is it, I'm done.
She didn't know there'd be a demand.
Yeah.
She didn't know there'd be a demand for more specials. She'd had her career up to that point where there was no demand. So she does a special and goes, and then I'm done. It's like, oh, what, you want me to come back? And you'll pay me how much?
Yeah. I'm excited to see what she does with her return.
Her new one. What is her new one called?
I don't know. Is it out yet? Or is it
I don't know.
About to come out? It's like
I heard the title, but it's like another person's name. I can't remember.
I don't know if it came out during Stephen Wright's lifetime or not.
It's called Douglas.
Oh, okay.
Douglas. So the jury is out on Hannah Gadsby. I'm excited to see what she does. Yeah. But let's talk about Dave Chappelle.
Yes.
I mean, I'm speechless.
Well, I'll be honest. I wasn't a huge stand-up fan of his back when he was doing his TV show. I love the show, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I appreciate his stand-up, but I wasn't like, oh my God, this guy's great. But the show was great. It was brilliant. And I was a huge fan. And when he came back though, I could not believe, and I mean, some people will feel he was that great the whole time. So forgive me for saying it, because some people are going to say, you're an idiot, Jordan. But when he came back and did his Netflix specials, I was just like, oh my God, this guy is brilliant. And part of that, I think, is he spent 12 years just doing stand-up and nothing else.
Yeah.
He was just in the clubs for 12. And it's like, again, I go back to the 10,000 hours, even though he had that previous to this. I think it's a different, because he didn't have any other distractions. Before, when he was doing stand-up, he was also trying to do movies and trying to do TV, and he was doing a pilot every year. Right. And then all of a sudden, he only did stand-up for 12 years and nothing else, And it shows. I think it shows.
I saw him in Montreal during Just for Laughs last year. Mm-hmm. He and John Mayer did a show together. John Mayer opened for him playing music, and then he came out and did, and just absolutely killed. And there is, in the culture that we're in right now, and in the moment in culture that we're in right now, it is easy to get canceled.
Yeah.
And the thing that I kept thinking while watching him, aside from the fact that he's brilliantly funny, is for the moment, for right now, for this I guess it was, so summer and almost 2 summers ago, I guess it was, I saw him summer of 2018. For the moment that we're in right now, he is fearlessness personified.
Well, I think, Mark, I will go back to what I said earlier. I'm going to quote myself.
Go quote yourself, Jordan. Let's see. What you got?
And, and I understand, like, I'm not a trans person, so I'm not going to say, let him do his joke. Cause if someone's doing N-word jokes and then somebody else says, well, let him do his jokes. I'm like, hey, you're not black, so you can't, you don't get to say, but I'll go back and say, he's so funny. When he does jokes, they're funny.
Yeah.
So people forgive him. It's like, you know what? I can't, even trans people are, there are trans people who laugh.
They're like, look, I get it. That's a funny joke.
It's funny. But if he were a mediocre comedian, or if he was trying to do jokes outside of his wheelhouse to be edgy, he'd be canceled. But because it's like, you can tell that he's being honest in his presentation. Mm-hmm. Like, this is just my thoughts right now, what I'm seeing. And the other thing I think that you really see more so than any comedian I've ever seen is his comfort level on stage at this point, where he just can come on stage and do like all this new material, and it just be brilliant. And I think that comes from doing those 12 years of shows, doing 4 hours at a time, some nights doing 4 hours on stage, where his comfort level, like we talked about effortless earlier, he has that in a way that I don't think he had before. And he's just so comfortable to walk out on stage and just start talking.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's Rat Pack cool.
Yeah.
Like doesn't care where he is. He doesn't care if it's 10,000 people or 10 people.
Yeah.
He's going to go out and do the show and be confident in it. There is like you use the word fearless, Mark. I don't know if again, if it were a white comedian using the N-word, I don't think I would say fearless.
No,
that is a problem. But he also oddly addresses it, but then keeps he's like, I'm not going to stop. It's not even that he apologizes. He just addresses that this is an issue and I get what they're saying. And now I'm going to keep going. That's kind of what he does. And like, there's almost like, there's a school of, we're all too sensitive and it's comedy and we should all just take it as comedy. And Adam Carolla's in that school as well. Adam Carolla, though, when he gets on stage, sounds like if Fox News became a comedian now, like he's gone too far in one direction where he's crusading as opposed to like, I'm going to say my jokes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And if it's funny, it's going to be funny.
Yeah.
So that
I think it's what we were saying earlier about commentary versus comedy. Like you're not up here to give us a political speech unless it's funny. Like it's probably comedy. So you're obligated to deliver that before you deliver your rant about how mad you are about the state of comedy. Like Dave Chappelle is saying, I'm mad about the state of comedy, but he's doing it in a funny way. We're laughing. You know, so you can't just go up there and preach and you can't just be angry.
Right. Well, he's all point of view, and the best comedians, their point of view is just hilarious. Yeah. Chappelle has this sort of timelessness, I think, where he is the age he is. He is who he is. He has his point of view about the world, and he is commenting on a time now that is not past his prime, but, you know, past when he was coming up in the game and and comedy. So he's, you know, speaking as an elder statesman, and sometimes an elder statesman by the standards of 2020 or 2018 or whatever, get things wrong, zeitgeist wise, but it doesn't change the fact that that's still his very funny point of view.
Right.
God, like I felt guilty laughing at some of the things that I laughed at that he said.
I mean, like for me, like I think he's able to get away with what he's able to get away with because he's able to make it funny and not mean.
Yeah.
I would say personally, if I were a trans person, I would say to him, it's hurtful to me. You're not doing these trans jokes as a trans person doing them, and you're not doing these trans jokes to a trans audience. Right. Where they feel like we're part, as opposed you're doing these trans jokes in front of non-trans people who don't mind laughing at trans people. Cause that's how I feel about black. If you're doing black jokes in front of a black audience and they're biting, it means we're all in this. It's not mean spirited. And I don't feel like if you're white and you're performing from a white audience and you're saying black women act like this and they're laughing, I'm like, well, I kind of feel uncomfortable. Right. I mean, what you're saying is true, but I feel uncomfortable. I'm not sure if it's cool that you're telling this joke and they're laughing at it.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, look, I'm fully aware of the fact that right now I am a straight white dude giving my thoughts on a black guy telling trans jokes.
No, but I mean, I think it's legitimate though. I think it's a legitimate criticism. I'm not, and I'm not even sure I'm right, you know, cause like I said, I don't believe in censorship. I think if you're white and you want to do N-word jokes, please go do it. But you also have to be willing to suffer the consequences. Yeah. You can't say, I'm going to do offensive material. And then when people go, I'm offended, go like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like, how dare you?
No, you said you're doing, you know, your stuff is offensive. So you should expect people to get offended and you have to then own it and say, hey, look, I'm trying something, guys. You know, I'm trying something. I have a bigger message or this is just what I find funny. And if you don't like it, I'm sorry. I don't mind if you say that, you know, but if you just act like, oh, people are so sensitive. It's like, yeah, of course they are. If I start doing jokes about your kid who has a limp because they were born with polio, but I think it's funny and the audience is laughing, you might get offended.
Right.
You know? So, like, you got to see if how some people take it personally.
Paul F. said something once that I'm gonna brutally paraphrase him and I send him my apologies. But he was like, yeah, when comedians say like, it's like you can't be funny anymore. It's like, yeah, you can. And just the bad ones can't. Yeah. The
but
ones
that's such a cop out.
Yeah, the ones that are smart and thinking about it and are, you know.
I'll tell you something that I learned.
It's just mindfulness.
You know, audiences change over time and things that I used to get laughed at the groundlings, like in an improv show, the kind of stuff I used to do like in the early 2000s, which was like, you know, I mean, like just the worst kind of like, this shouldn't be funny, but the audience would love it because it was so dark. I would do the dark. And I can't do that stuff today, period. I can't. They groan. They get scared. They get uncomfortable. And I can't go like, well, this is funny and I'm just going to force you to hear it. I'm like, no, I'm an entertainer. My job is to entertain. So if they're not biting on it, I need to find another way to reach this audience. I just think that's my that's my responsibility as a performer, is to entertain the audience and not get mad at them because they don't like, this rape joke I'm doing. Because, 16 years ago, they loved it.
Right. You look at movies, most of the classic movies that you can think of, it ain't mostly the comedies. You know what I mean? Like, comedy is fleeting. Times change and tastes change.
Oh, you can go back and watch some old comedies and go like, that was okay then.
Oh, yeah.
Any comedy, you go back 20 years later, you go, like I was talking about, what was that Kevin Kline movie where he's gay, where he's the gay teen?
In and Out. Yeah.
And you watch that now, you go, oh, this is very problematic.
Sure.
Like, all the stereotypes of what shows you're gay. Just like, but at the time, it wasn't problematic,
No. Or Bill and Ted dropping F-bombs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. At each other every time they would do something that was remotely non-masculine.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
Geez, guys, come on.
Yeah. And I don't think you can go back in time and say, oh, that person is homophobic or that person is racist. It's like, no, at that time, that's what people did and it was allowed and no one knew that people were offended by it.
Yeah.
People weren't aware that there were people who were offended by this.
Right.
But when they became aware of it, they stopped doing it. It's like blackface. In its heyday, there were no black people going to Broadway shows.
Right.
Like, I'm not sure about this. But then when black people got more of a voice, then they were like, yeah, it's offensive. Then eventually it stopped.
Yeah.
I mean, to an extent, unless, you're one of the many politicians who've gotten in trouble for it recently.
Sure. Yeah, Justin Trudeau. Oh man. Yeah. So I came back to work. I was in Canada. I came back to work the day after the election. It had dropped that Justin Trudeau had done this blackface thing at a party once. And then being a parliamentary system, he won, but not by a big enough margin. So he had what split was called a minority government. And I walked into work the next day and one of the grips on set was talking about the election. He goes, yeah, minority government seems like a pretty fitting punishment. Like, no, that's ridiculous. And we haven't mentioned Tig Notaro. We should give a shout out to Tig Notaro as well. Talk about using your life and making pain funny. Like, pathos and comedy have been partners since comedy was invented, and Tig really knows how to do that brilliantly. But I feel like
favorite way to do comedy is to take pain and because that's what we all relate to.
Yeah, but I think coming out of the 2000s, Dave Chappelle is
for sure. He's the guy.
Yeah, he's the guy.
I mean, he's on his way to being on the Mount Rushmore of stand-up comedians.
Yeah,
if the trajectory continues at this rate, I mean, I don't know how you can deny him the 2000s.
I love, by the way, that our finalists, which I will review now, that they are all like. Once we get past Lenny Bruce in the 60s, it is a direct, this is just direct lineage. It goes, so we've got Lenny Bruce, then Richard Pryor,
Grandpa,
Dad,
Eddie
Murphy, Chris Rock, and Dave Chappelle. Those are our 5 finalists.
Okay.
That is almost, that's almost a absolutely linear influence.
Yeah. You can just follow them in a straight line.
Based on that, and based on the influence that each has had on the one, or the influence that each has taken from those previous to them, Lenny Bruce aside, again, do we really need to have a long discussion about who it is?
I know my pick.
Of course.
Yeah. Same.
And your pick, I think we all came into this knowing who we were eventually going to. Our show, we give the objective, correct answer to subjective questions.
Yes.
And that is our hook. This is almost a perfect version of that because it is almost an objective answer.
Yeah. Should we go off the 8 on 3?
Yeah. 1, 2, 3.
Byron Allen.
Oh, yeah. Richard. Yeah. Byron Allen. People of the world.
I didn't catch what you guys said. In all seriousness, it is Richard Pryor.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, I think Byron Allen, deserves a mention. Because, Byron Allen was Eddie Murphy's hero.
Really?
Yeah, because Byron Allen was 15 years old, a comedian, and already on television. So Eddie was 15, a comedian, and going, I want to be like Byron Allen. He said that was his hero. Growing up, Byron Allen's he was like, I want to go to LA just like Byron Allen and get on TV.
Wow.
He went to New York and got on TV. So
yeah.
One day you'll find success, Eddie Murphy, but not on our show. It's Richard Pryor.
In Byron Allen's story, if you ever get a chance to listen to his Mark Maron, you should, because how his career happened is mind blowing. Like, his story is insane, in the best way, in all good ways. Like, you're just like, wow, I can't believe that was your life.
I have to give it a listen. Mark Maron gets all kinds of stuff out of people.
Yeah. Byron Allen he's like a multimillionaire executive. Like, yeah.
He owns all these cable channels, and he owns the Weather Channel.
Does he really?
He's like the Buck Owens of comedy, where like Buck Owens, in like the 60s, as he started to get money from writing, he would buy radio stations and bought a publishing company, like just figured out, like, people who have that mind to figure out, like, oh, I see how money's being made here, I'm going to do that.
I'll tell you this real quick. This is what he told Mark, was that how he got started was he would call up these local affiliates and say, will you give me an hour between 2 and 3 a.m.? And they would say, yeah. And then he'd go out and one by one find advertisers, to go on the show. He'd make the show for nothing, because it's on at 2 a.m. anyway. And he did it like from his dining room table. He said he'd be on the phone just calling, and that's what he did.
Wow.
Respect that hustle.
Unbelievable.
Isn't that crazy?
Well, Hal, bring us home, will you?
All right, people of the world, you knew this going in. Mark and I were texting earlier today, and he was like, I think the 2 finalists, this is when we weren't going by decade, there were names you had suggested as twins. And I was like, let me guess, Pryor and Carlin, knowing full well that George Carlin was not going to win. Richard Pryor, he's the greatest stand-up comedian of all time. He blended everything that came before him, and he influenced everything that came after him. Everything he does, his specials still hold up. They're as much like of their time in the best possible way as they are timeless in the best possible way. There will never be anybody like him, but all the other great comedians that we named after him owe him a huge debt, and openly admit that. As great as they all are, none of them would exist without Richard Pryor. He's the greatest comedian of all time. Asked and answered.
Yeah. Jordan, thank you for coming on the show. This was an absolute treat. I'm sorry we kept you for so long, but I knew this was going to be a in-depth discussion. Where can people find you? What do you want folks to know?
Oh, they can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Fake Jordan Black.
Perfect. Well, thank you again so much. Who suggested this topic, Hal?
This was suggested, this old chestnut by, let me find the name.
I know. I always ask him who sent the thing.
This was suggested on the subreddit by Tuna the Panda. You figured it out. All right,
Tuna the Panda.
Sure.
Panda.
Yeah.
Thank you for the topic, Tuna. This one is closed, but there are many more topics to discuss. So please reach out to us on Twitter at We Got This Tweets. Check out the Maximum Fun subreddit, or
email us at wegotThisPodcast@gmail.com, or go to our Facebook group. Talk about the stand-ups you love. Share clips of your favorite bits. That's what this is about. Facebook.com/groups/We Got This Podcast. Thank you to producer Ken Plume, researcher Kate McManus, graphic designer Uri Kelman, and QA engineer Jen Alba.
And thanks, of course, to our musicians, Jonathan Dinerstein and Mike Furman, for our score and theme song, respectively. And thank you to you, the people of the world, our listeners, for giving us a chance to sit down and talk about something that we clearly are not passionate about in any way. This is obviously a topic near and dear to our hearts, and we appreciate you giving us a listen and letting us ramble on about our personal influences for this episode. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. For Hal Lublin, I'm Mark Gagliardi.
For Mark Gagliardi, I'm Hal Lublin. And don't worry, everybody. We got this.
We got this.
MaximumFun.org.
Comedy and culture.
Artist owned.
Audience supported.